Chapter 697. Wherever the sword blade passed, there was no one who could withstand it. If one had seen the dazzling performance of Free Gouda and Seed, one would understand the meaning of the above sentence. Other than facing the main enemy, no other soldiers could stand still under the light beam sword of Free Gouda, not even for a second. In the blink of an eye, the light beam sword had yet to disappear, but the enemy mechs that were blocking the advance of Free Gouda were scattered. Even though the weapon in Free Gouda's hand had been changed to the high-frequency vibration sword created by the Dawn Society, the result was still the same. Tut 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 tut. The moment the first man Roddy was turned into a human stick by Free Gouda, the remaining two-man roadies were even more frenzied as they fired their submachine gun bullets at Free Gouda amidst the flames of different lengths. The two-man Roddy that were forced to do something beyond their ability looked at the man Roddy that their companion was piloting in horror as they called out the name of the person who led them in the attack. Sir Kodar! Sir Kodar! Quick! Quick! Come and save us! Amidst the sparks from the muzzle, the ghostly Freedom Gundam appeared in front of the second man Roddy at some point in time. The moment the pair of electronic pupils that flashed with golden light was captured by man Roddy's electronic eyes, the sword in Free Gouda's hand bloomed again. Buzz! In an instant, man Roddy's armor that could withstand most of the firearms used by the MS was cut open like a fragile piece of paper by the high-frequency vibration sword. Bang! The man Roddy heard a terrifying sound from the cockpit when the mech was destroyed. In front of him was the screen that fell into a dead silence after the power source was cut off due to the imbalance of the power furnace. Other than that, the man Roddy felt as if he had fallen into the dead silence of the underworld, waiting for that moment to come. State 0. I've settled it here. This time, man Roddy's performance could not be compared to the previous batch. Was it because the standard was lower? Or was it because he was forced to do something beyond his ability? Ray Minkai didn't pay much attention to it. Right now, the only thing that could stop them was the Gouda Gusion piloted by the androgynous Qdar Kabayan. He would be left to State 0 to deal with. TSK. Were those people's standards so low, it can't even warm you up? State 0 snorted. That's probably just a temporary replacement. After all, as long as the Alea knowledge system is successfully installed, even an ordinary person can master the way to drive an MS in a short time. Oof, what a convenient system. I still need some time here. Go and finish your business. State 0 chuckled and disconnected from Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai knew that this was probably a good show of a cat playing with a mouse. This was not strange. Since the accident that happened in the strange space, he had been holding back, and now he had the opportunity to come out in his original form to let out some fresh air. Let it vent its anger. I hope that the androgynous guy can hold on for a while. Among the dense wreckage, Gouda Gusion stood on a huge warship wreckage. Qdar, who was piloting it, was even more cautious as he observed the surrounding situation. That white light, what kind of monster is it? Qdar, who had some doubts about the white light, finally believed the warning of his subordinates after being hit by the androgynous Gusion. However, from the radar in front of him, his subordinates seemed to have all been killed by the enemy. As for himself, he was entangled by the erratic white light that he couldn't see clearly. Boom! Gouda Gusion's heavy hammer was heavily smashed on the wreckage under his feet, splashing up a cloud of dust. This seemed to be a provocation. The androgynous Gusion, who was hiding on a nearby piece of rubble, looked down at Gouda Gusion and didn't attack immediately. Those who had raised cats or were familiar with felines might know that when felines had their eyes on their prey, they would not attack immediately. Instead, they would lurk quietly, approach their prey, and then attack violently to finish the job. Right now, the androgynous Gusion's actions were like this. Sure enough, it's covered in a turtle shell. The humans in this world are really interesting. The narrow golden pupils were able to see through Gouda Gusion's body under the extraordinarily round outer armor. As the rubble moved slowly, the distance between the androgynous Gusion and Gouda Gusion also decreased. However, due to the surrounding wreckage and rubble, Gouda Gusion's radar didn't seem to be able to react immediately. In other words, in order to be able to rely on the protection of the dark universe formed by countless wreckage and gravel, Below has carried out targeted improvements, resulting in the tusked Lion Zero, which relied on the inertia of the wreckage and gravel itself to achieve the ideal goal of complete stealth. Where is it? Where's that monster? When he picked up the heavy hammer in his hand again, Kodar knew that he couldn't stay any longer. With the passage of time, the mothership that lost the protection of the MS would inevitably be attacked by the enemy. If he didn't rush back in time, he was afraid that he would become a part of the dark universe, in the form of a cold corpse. Boom! Under the androgynous appearance of Gauda Gusan, a large number of propulsion nozzles erupted and separated Gauda Gusion from the wreckage of the battleship under his feet. He was ready to push Gauda Gusion back quickly. However, the moment Gauda Gusion rose into the air, a flaw appeared. Opportunity! Hiding in the dark, the androgynous Gusion that was always watching Gauda Gusion's every move exploded on the spot. He jumped down from Gauda Gusion's head and hit Gauda Gusion like a meteor. If this hit Gauda Gusion again, even if the body was fine, Kodar, who was sitting inside, would inevitably suffer a terrible impact. One must know that this guy didn't change into the pilot's suit that he needed to wear during space combat. Found you. Cute monster. However, the androgynous Gusion's ambush didn't seem to have the expected result, because at the moment when the androgynous Gusion rushed out of the shadows, the heavy hammer in Gauda Gusion's hand instantly changed direction. After Gusion swung a semicircle, he used the strong inertia to drive Gauda Gusion to turn around and hit the back of his head. Boom! If Gauda Gusion and the androgynous Gusion were in the atmosphere at this moment, the collision between the two would inevitably cause a terrible shockwave and destroy everything in the surroundings along with the air. Boom! In this attack, Gauda Gusion successfully blocked the androgynous Gusion's attack. However, he was hit by the terrible impact and was fiercely sent flying. He rolled weakly until he hit a piece of gravel that was only a few times bigger than Gauda Gusion. Only then did he stabilize his body in the splashing dust. Damn it. What the hell? The impact not only made Gauda Gusion lose control for a while, it also made Kodar feel dizzy. In his shaky eyes, Kodar finally saw the true body of the white light from the overlapping screen in front of him. A huge and mighty head, sharp and terrible teeth, sharp and cold claws. This was the true body of the white light that Kodar saw as his vision gradually became clearer. How is this possible? Lion, how is this possible? Unlike the people on Mars, as a pirate wandering in the universe, Kodar did have a lot of opportunities to come into contact with things from Earth. Even if he did not have much interest in it, he would still learn about it from various channels. But the true body of the white light in front of him had a form that was almost similar to the lion form that Kodar knew. In addition to the size that was comparable to an MS and the cold steel armor that covered the entire body, and the ability to move freely in a vacuum and have the ability to attack. Creature? Beast-type body? How is this possible? Even with Lars Horn, it is impossible to have such a body. Doubts sprouted in Kodar's mind like bamboo shoots after the rain. But he could not find any answer that could explain the changes in front of him. The many doubts and unsolvable answers made Kodar feel impatient. I don't care. Let's get rid of this monster first. A pirate will always be a pirate. When encountering an unknown enemy, they would either attack or turn and run. And Kodar seemed to belong to the former. Boom! Boom! In the next second, the two cannons on Gauda Gusion's chest were fired. Two high explosive bombs went straight to the long-toothed lion. Roar! Seeing this, the long-toothed lion did not retreat, but instead moved forward, waving its left and right claws. Before the high explosive bombs hit it, it exploded on the spot. Boom! The moment the high explosive bombs exploded, the flames and smoke that erupted not only wrapped around the long-toothed lion, but also gave Kodar a chance. Oiler, die for me! Kodar, who saw the opportunity, screamed and pushed Gusion's Gauda Gusion to the limit, and used this push to the limit to drag the heavy hammer in his hand towards the center of the flames and smoke. Kodar clearly remembered that this must be the location of the long-toothed lion's head. According to the experience of fighting with the enemy in the past, this blow would definitely be able to destroy the enemy. Yes, Kodar believed it, because in the past, the outcome of the battle was like this. The storm stirred up by the heavy hammer in Gundam Gyujin's hand blew away the flames and smoke that had yet to dissipate. It also made Kodar feel the heaviness of this swift and violent strike hitting the target, as well as an incomparably satisfying feeling. However, Kodar subconsciously opened his mouth wide, and the moment he let out a triumphant laugh, the pleasure that filled his chest and abdomen was suddenly stuck. In the dissipating flames, under the impact of the heavy hammer, Li Mu was stunned. A layer of weak, but clearly visible light was firmly placed under the heavy hammer and the long-toothed lion's head. The light that was almost as thin as a piece of paper was actually able to block the heavy hammer that was enough to smash an ordinary MS into pieces in midair, making it unable to move forward and smash the long-toothed lion's head. What's going on? Kodar opened his eyes wide, his hands moved, and Gauda-san once again moved the heavy hammer in his hand and slammed it down. Boom! The heavy force accompanied the fall of the heavy hammer and fiercely smashed on the layer of light. This attack was ferocious and terrifying, Kodar firmly believed, because the violent inertia feedback had already passed from Gauda Gyujin's hands to the cockpit. But the thin layer of light was still very strong, and there was no sign of it being smashed by the heavy hammer. Doubts emerged again, but more than that, there was anger. I don't care what you are. I will definitely not fail here. I will definitely not die here. The brilliance of the flames crazily shot out from Gauda Gyujin's feet and body. And this almost exceeded the limit of the thrust. Gauda Gusion instantly jumped up. Then he suddenly fell, and with the strong falling inertia, he once again waved the heavy hammer in his hand to smash the long-toothed lion's head. Monster, die for me. Boom! The terrifying power suddenly exploded. Countless dust was shaken up. It buried the fragile light in front of Gauda Gusion, and also swallowed the long-toothed lion's head. The heavy breathing crazily tore at Kodar's lungs. The screen in front of him was the constantly tumbling dust. Is it done? The answer was no. A faint light quietly emerged from the tumbling dust, and behind this radiance, the pure, white, long-fong Lion Zero walked with a relaxed pace, step by step, stepping out of the deep pit that was smashed by Gundam Gusion. How was it possible? At this moment, Kodar, who had been licking the blood on the tip of his blade, finally knew fear. Although the monster in front of him did not launch many attacks, and just stood there for him to attack, but from the appearance of no injury, the strength of this monster was far beyond his expectations. Fear, like a tide, came. Kodar could not help but feel that the scythe of death was still on his neck. What kind of joke is this? Hey! Both eyes stared at the pure white, long-toothed lion's head. Kodar's roar was both fearful and angry. You are enjoying it, right? Right. Look at the opponent's powerless resistance. Kill the opponent step by step. Kodar's roar resounded through the communication channel. His face was extremely distorted, and his thoughts were pushed to the limit by the scythe of death on his neck. Die! Die! Go to hell! The four cannons on Gauda Gyujin's chest suddenly exploded, and once again used the same trick. The result was completely different. Wong. Light. A beam of light that was more solid and visible than before blocked the Gundam's projectile. In the light, the shells that were blocked trembled crazily, twisted, until the moment when Gauda Gusion swung his heavy hammer and rushed over. It actually retreated instantly. Boom! At this moment, in front of Kodar's eyes was an instant, and also a light that froze his life forever. Boom! Looking from afar, a terrible light erupted in front of the long-toothed lion's head and engulfed Gauda Gusion. Until the light disappeared, Countless pieces of armor that came from Gao de Gyujin's body spread out in front of the long-toothed lion's head like radiation, until it rolled endlessly in the boundless void. And among these pieces of armor, there was a body that had been stripped of all its armor, leaving only a black and swarthy skeleton. It was like a sealed giant falling into a deep sleep. Chapter 698. Da-da-da. Gunshots continued to sound from the depths of the tunnel. It was the attack force that rushed in from Fishfire. Ever since Man Rodi and Gauda Gasayan were defeated by Freedom Gauda and Long Fong Lion Zero, the Bloa's pirates also came to the end. Even in the face of the destruction of Man Rodi's team, the Bloa's pirates still had a strong desire to survive in the face of Freedom Gauda, who was extremely terrifying to them. However, no matter how dense and fierce the gunfire on the two armored ships of the Bloa's pirates, it still couldn't stop the two high-frequency vibration blades in Freedom Gauda's hands from destroying the turrets. With the Bloa's pirates' attack, the turrets on the armored ships were all destroyed by Freedom Gauda. Under the guidance of Freedom Gauda's signal, Fishfire and Warhammer finally passed through the layers of wreckage and appeared in front of the Bloa's pirates. This was the moment of the Bloa's pirates' destruction. Hey, is this true? With just one machine, the most troublesome Bloa's pirates in the Dark Sea route was taken care of? That's sire. Shocking, isn't it? Nemesis. This was the conversation between Nemesis and Armida when Warhammer entered the battlefield and saw the tragic state of the two Bloa's pirates' battleships, which made most of the Chamber of Commerce tremble in fear. Of course, this conversation had nothing to do with the Ironflower Regiment, because when they saw the two armored ships that had lost all their weapons and were powerless like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, the Ironflower Regiment knew that their time to perform had finally come. Moreover, this landing battle would not be like the one in Rei Mingkai's memory, where the Ironflower Regiment suffered heavy losses and had to swallow their bitter water. Da-da-da-da. While gunshots swept through the tunnel, numerous sparks were constantly jumping around Sino's feet. TSK, you've obviously lost the chance to escape, but your firepower is still so fierce. Zeno was the commander in charge of leading the assault on the Brua's pirates. According to his and Olga's speculation, in the face of Gao Da's terrible force threat, the pirates that gave Nemesis a headache should know what to do. But in reality, when Sino led his team to attack, he found that there was an interception force formed by people like Akihiro and the others, which made Sino and the others feel great pressure. Don't these guys know that we're not their enemies? Sino wanted to secretly observe the situation in the depths of the tunnel, but before he could stick his head out, he was scared back by a barrage of random shots. Thinking for a moment, Sino suddenly remembered that before they set off, Olga had specifically instructed them to bring a certain piece of equipment. It was said that when Rei Mingkai was on Jupiter, he had specifically requested for it to be prepared. Although when they set off, Sino couldn't help but take a look out of curiosity, but when he found that the so-called specially prepared stuff wasn't anything rare, it was just some stun grenades that would make people lose their combat effectiveness, he didn't pay much attention to it. But now, under the stubborn resistance of the enemy and the situation of the sealed warship channel, Sino finally remembered the stun grenades that Rei Mingkai had prepared. Could it be that you've thought of this from the very beginning? The moment this thought flashed through Sino's mind, a smile of understanding suddenly appeared on Sino's face. Hey, you, take that thing out, yes. That's it. Take out the stun grenade. After casually pointing at his companions behind him, Sino took a deep breath and shouted, "Follow me." Da-da-da-da. The moment the submachine gun in Sino's hand rang out again, two black shadows flew out from behind Sino and disappeared into the depths of the tunnel in the whistling rain of bullets. The moment two ear-piercing buzzes exploded, the path leading to the capture of Brook, the leader of the Bloa's pirates, was opened. Half an hour later, before the smoke from the assault warship of the Bloa's pirates dissipated, Brook, who looked like a fat pig, was escorted back to Yuhua by Sino and the others who returned victoriously with smiles on their faces. Olga, Minace, and even Chong Hong, who was captured by Gauda, stood among the Neku of Yuhua and watched as the fat pig was pushed off the shuttle by Sino and the others. Yo, who is this? Isn't this the famous leader of the Bloa's pirates, Brooke? Why are you here as a guest today? Seeing the pile of fat rolling on the floor, Minace, who was an old acquaintance of Brooke, walked up and lifted her leg to hook Brooke's fat head up a little. You, Minace, you bastard. I won't let you go just like this. Brooke was quite stubborn. Even if he was captured by the Ironflower Regiment, he still dared to threaten Minace. Oh, you won't let it go just like this? That's interesting. But the one who came to settle the score with you today isn't me. I'm just here to watch the show and say hello to an old friend. Minace raised her eyebrows and used her right leg to poke Brooke's fat head, then turned around and returned to Olga's side. Olga, this pig, what do you want to do with it? Facing Minace's question, Olga slightly lowered his head. He knew that although Brooke was captured by the Ironflower Regiment, the decision wasn't in his hands. It was even in the hands of any member of the Ironflower Regiment. At this moment, a series of mechanical roars could be heard. The Free Gauda had returned. The steel giant with unparalleled combat power and iconic steel wings once again appeared in the Fishfire Naku. Thunderous cheers instantly swept through the entire Naku. Especially when Ray Minkai walked out of the Free Gauda's cockpit. The members of the Ironflower Regiment burst out with even louder and more enthusiastic cheers. Not for anything else. They were cheering for Ray Minkai's feat of single-handedly destroying the Bloa's pirates. This guy's reputation is getting more and more popular. Amidst the cheers, Minace secretly glanced at Olga. When she found that her adopted brother seemed to be one of the cheers, she shrugged her shoulders. There's nothing bad about it. After all, that person's ambition shouldn't be with the Ironflower Regiment. On the other side, Brooke, who was lying on the cold floor, couldn't move at all. The moment he saw the Free Gauda, his face turned ashen. No matter how stubborn he was, the moment he saw the mech that destroyed the Bloa's pirates, he knew his end. Ray Minkai, who walked out of the Free Gauda, was surrounded by the crowd and came to Olga and Minace. The question that Minace asked Olga before was also placed in front of Ray Minkai. How to deal with it? Ray Minkai was a little surprised. As for how to deal with space pirates, as a member of the Outer Circle, the famous Taban's leader should know very well. After pondering for a moment, Ray Minkai seemed to understand Minace's approach. Perhaps I'm not qualified to make any judgment on Brooke. Under everyone's gaze, Ray Minkai said this sentence. What? Your Excellency doesn't plan to do anything to this fat pig? While the people of the Ironflower Regiment broke out into a heated discussion, it also made the ashen-faced Brooke feel a glimmer of hope. Quiet. The one who is most qualified to deal with him here is not me, nor is it anyone from the Ironflower Regiment or Tabans. It is them. Ray Minkai first raised his hand to stop the discussion, then pointed to the end of the crowd, the group of people who had been looking at this side but didn't dare to come forward. The group of people including Changhong Altran. Seeing them, the people of the Ironflower Regiment and even Minace understood Ray Minkai's meaning on the spot. So, a road leading to Ray Minkai and the immobile Brooke was opened up by the people of the Ironflower Regiment. Changhong, who was standing in front, froze for a moment. It seemed that he didn't expect the people of the Ironflower Regiment to push him to the front. Come here, Changhong Altran. If there is anyone on this ship who is qualified to deal with him, the leader of the Brook Pirates, then the most qualified person is only you and all of you. Ray Minkai stretched out his finger and pointed to Changhong, and also pointed to the partners behind Changhong, and also pointed to Brooke, who was lying on ground. Seeing Ray Minkai's attitude, Brooke's face became even paler. He knew how he usually treated the people of the Ironflower Regiment, including Changhong. He also knew very well how he casually punished these people who were worthless in the eyes of the world, like garbage. Looking at the pale-faced Brooke, Changhong suddenly felt a trace of pleasure in his heart. But he couldn't make a decision. He was not the only one who felt this way. Even his companions behind him felt the same way. Looking at Brooke's miserable state, their hearts were filled with pleasure. But facing the problem of how to deal with Brooke, they were cowering and couldn't say a word for a long time. This made Olga and even Akahong frown. Has he accumulated too much power? Seeing this scene, Minace already understood. From Akahong, Minace didn't see much about the current situation of the Ironflower Regiment. Perhaps this was because Olga was in front of them, blocking the wind and rain, so Akahong and the others didn't receive the same inhumane treatment as the Ironflower Regiment in the universe. Akahong. This is the current situation of the Ironflower Regiment in the universe. Even if they see their owners become prisoners with their own eyes, they still don't dare to make any sound of resistance. Do you see it clearly? Lei Mingkai glanced at Minace, then turned to the big guy who stood out among the crowd and said, "Don't worry." Akahong moved the corner of his mouth, but didn't say a word. In fact, he had already faintly sensed the reason why Changhong, who had been separated for a long time, didn't want to recognize him. Roar. Coincidentally, when everyone was waiting for Changhong and the others' decision, a familiar low roar came from the side aisle. It was State Zero. Dong! Dong! Amidst the heavy footsteps, a pure white lion that was as tall as a small mountain slowly walked out of the aisle, following the path that the crowd made, and walked to Rei Mingkai's side. At the same time, the sharp-eyed people noticed that the pure white lion seemed to be holding a sword in its mouth, as well as two gorgeous pistols that were more decorative than practical. Clang! The sound of metal hitting the floor gave Brook a fright, but it also allowed him to see a glimmer of hope in his ashen face. Since Changhong and the others can't make a decision, then let's use a competition to decide. Rei Mingkai and State Zero looked at each other, then bent down to pick up the two pistols that fell on the floor, and said while checking the pistols, "These are two revolvers, and there are two bullets here. I will load these two revolvers with a bullet, then you, Mr. Brook, and Changhong will each choose a revolver, and when the countdown ends, pull the trigger at each other at the same time." Wait. This. Without waiting for Rei Mingkai to finish, Olga opened her mouth and asked, "Yes, Revolver of Death. It's cruel, but it's also a fair game, isn't it?" Rei Mingkai sneered as he pushed the two bullets into the two revolvers and showed the revolvers to everyone. Ka! Ka! As the two revolvers were ready, State Zero also popped out a claw and cut the rope that bound Brook. "Come on, Mr. Brook. Whether you live or die, it's all up to you. Isn't this the way of survival for pirates?" Looking at the two revolvers in Rei Mingkai's hands, Brook slowly stood up and glanced at Minace. "Hee. Don't worry, Mr. Brook. I will guarantee that you will live. But the premise is that you can survive the Revolver of Death." In Rei Mingkai's sneer, Brook gritted his teeth and finally chose the revolver in Rei Mingkai's right hand. It wasn't that he didn't think of using the revolver to kidnap Rei Mingkai, but he didn't have the confidence to use a bullet to fight against the terrifying lion, as well as Minace and the others. "I hope you can keep your promise." Brook, who had no other choice, took the revolver he chose and walked a distance away, waiting for Changhong's choice. Yes, this so-called Revolver of Death was a scene that Brook was familiar with. In the past, Brook didn't know how many times he had seen it, and even participated in it. In the end, he survived every time. His mind recalled all kinds of luck in the past. Brook took a deep breath, opened his eyes wide, and glared at Changhong. "Come on, I, Brook Abayan, am right here, waiting for you bunch of worthless scum." Under the accumulated power of the past, Changhong and the others were so scared that they took a few steps back, not daring to look at Brook. This made Zhao Hong extremely anxious, but he couldn't go forward to help. "Calm down, Zhao Hong. Your Excellency may have his own ideas." Although Olga couldn't see Rei Mingkai's intention, she still felt some clues. "I say, little brother, you can't retreat, you can't advance. If I were you, I'd rather choose to advance. At least, this way, I'll die like a human, right?" Minace glanced at the anxious Zhao Hong, and also glanced at Olga, who seemed to understand something. After secretly giving Rei Mingkai a look, she intentionally or unintentionally knocked on Changhong. Sure enough, under Minace's knock, Changhong seemed to have reacted. Brook, who had accumulated power and was holding the revolver and waiting for him to go forward and die, was extremely anxious, but he still couldn't recognize his brother. And Rei Mingkai, who had put on this formation, but his intentions were unclear. It seemed that there was a giant net that was enveloping him. Either he would be trapped in this giant net, unable to break free until he was strangled to death by the giant net, or he would bravely move forward, fight for a glimmer of hope, tear the giant net, and win a free sky for himself. The choice at this moment was made. Chang Hong calmed his mind, but he didn't look at Chang Hong. Instead, he walked in front of Ray Mingkai and reached out to take the remaining revolver from his hand. Then, he walked to the opposite side of Brooke. "I'm ready." At this moment, Ray Mingkai's mouth revealed a trace of a smile of appreciation. "Then let's begin. Ka ka ka, ka ka ka." As soon as Ray Mingkai's voice fell, the two revolvers, under the pull of their respective owners, burst out a series of trigger sounds. However, after two rapid triggers were pulled, a figure that was as fat as a small hill fell to the ground. Chapter 699. The bright red gradually flowed onto the floor. His body, which was as fat as a small mountain, had already fallen onto the cold floor. He could no longer stand on top of Chang Hong and the others like he used to. However, looking at the frightened, pig-like face and the pair of eyes filled with disbelief, Chang Hong suddenly felt an unprecedented sense of relief from his shoulders and the heavy body that used to be like a walking corpse. Suddenly, a strong force landed on Chang Hong's shoulder. The still-smoking revolver was also taken away from Chang Hong's hands. "Well done, Chang Hong Altran. From today onwards, you are all liberated." Re-liberated. A glimmer of light gradually appeared in Chang Hong's dull eyes. "We were liberated?" Chang Hong's wooden face didn't even have time to show an expression that matched his words before a tower-like figure hugged Chang Hong tightly in his arms. It's okay. Chang Hong, we're going home." Seeing that Akira Hiro could no longer control his emotions after witnessing everything and hugging Chang Hong tightly in his arms, and then looking at the Iron Flower Regiment members who were quietly wiping their tears, Lei Mingkai smiled slightly, nodded at Olga, and turned to leave the garage with State Zero. What a touching scene. After watching Ray Mingkai and State Zero leave, Mayonnaise took a few steps forward and picked up the revolver that was left beside Brooke's body. What surprised Mayonnaise was that the moment the revolver was in his hands, he felt that something was wrong. The trigger of the revolver had indeed hit the primer of the bullet. However, the primer of the bullet did not fire as smoothly as Mayonnaise expected. Slightly frowning, Mayonnaise skillfully pulled the trigger back to its original position and opened the cylinder to remove the bullet. He held it in front of his eyes for a while. It seems that this person's mysteriousness is still beyond my expectations. In front of Mayonnaise's eyes, the primer of the bullet was intact, and there were no traces of collision at all. Either that, the primer of the bullet did not exist at the root. Either that, or the revolver's trigger had never been pulled from the beginning to the end, nor had it hit a single bullet. However, under the watchful eyes of everyone, how did Ray Mingkai make the trigger unable to fire the primer of the bullet? After thinking for a while, Mayonnaise put the bullet back into his pocket and handed the revolver to Olga. "Olga, this might be a good souvenir for those brothers." In fact, Olga also saw Mayonnaise's actions. However, he did not think as much as Mayonnaise did. As for Olga, no matter what plans Lei Mingkai had in mind, the conclusion of this incident was that the Zhaohong brothers were reunited after being separated for many years. "Brother, I'll pass it to them." Looking at Olga, who took the revolver, Mayonnaise smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "All right, the matter here had come to an end." In that case, the next stop was the final stop of this journey. "Olga, I hope you're prepared." "Yes, brother." The reunion of the brothers made the Tihua Regiment, who did not suffer any losses in this incident, happy. But among the people who witnessed the whole process, there were still people who were puzzled. Gidelia was one of these people. She didn't understand why Ray Mingkai made such a decision in the end. Obviously, for that heinous space pirate, he only needed to. "Are you puzzled?" Gidelia. As if noticing Gidelia's confusion, Lakis, who was watching the scene from afar, asked softly. At first, she was surprised, then she slowly nodded. Gudelia hesitated for a moment, then spoke her thoughts. In fact, we only need to hand that pirate to the words were at the tip of her tongue, but Gudelia paused. According to her idea, as long as the pirate was handed over to Lars Horn, most of the problems could be solved. However, the current situation of the Tiwa regiment was that they offended Lars Horn and were forced to join Daiwa's subordinates to continue their journey to Earth. Therefore, handing over Brook, the heinous pirate leader, to Lars Horn is undoubtedly releasing the tiger back to the mountain. Gudelia, who reacted, glanced at Lux and found that Lux was looking at her. That gaze seemed to have seen through her thoughts. Gudelia's small face also appeared two small red clouds. Gudelia, have you ever thought about Guy's purpose of doing this? What does it mean to Changhong, Outland, and the others? As Lux raised the question, she added, don't worry. Look, Changhong's appearance now, and his appearance not long ago. Appearance? As soon as Gudelia heard Lux's hint, she seemed to feel something, especially when she raised her eyes and looked at Changhong and the others. Gudelia's mind instantly recalled the scene when she first saw Changhong and the others. A thin body, an indifferent expression. His eyes were dull and lifeless, and the scars all over the body. This is the epitome of the Terminator people struggling to survive in the universe. This scene was still fresh in Gudelia's mind, but it created a strong impact with the scene before her eyes. People are still the same people. However, the expressions on their faces have become vivid. Indifference, crying. There's also uncontrollable laughter. It became the main theme of their moment. The existence of the Terminator people is undoubtedly equivalent to the reproduction of the slave era recorded in the books of the old era. Only when they, as absolute sellers, dare to pick up their weapons and fire the first shot of resistance against the slave masters who forced them into servitude. These people who were subjected to servitude, oppression, and unequal treatment might be able to usher in true liberation. After a pause, Lux looked at Gudelia's puzzled expression and then smiled softly. Perhaps these words are a bit difficult for you. But Kai is very good at using such a sentence to describe it. A sentence? Gudelia looked at Lux with a glimmer of eagerness in her eyes. Yes, a sentence. Where there is oppression, there will be resistance. Lux recalled a sentence that Ray Minkai casually mentioned when she was discussing the Terminator people with Ray Minkai. Where there is oppression, there will be resistance. In an instant, the memories in Gudelia's mind seemed to have received some kind of order and kept surging out from the depths of her memories. Regardless of whether it was the memories that Gudelia remembered or the memories that she had forgotten, they were like bamboo shoots after a spring rain, surging crazily from the depths of the sea of memories. Under the guidance of certain opportunity, Gudelia saw everything that she had experienced from the perspective of a bystander. Where there is oppression, there will be resistance. Night. The night sky on Earth was starry and bright. It was quiet and beautiful. Under this beautiful night sky, a banquet was held to welcome the two heirs of the Seven Stars families who had returned from their patrol mission at the borders, as well as to celebrate the successful engagement ceremony between two of the Seven Stars families. The Fard family and the Badwin family had begun. In the luxuriously decorated venue, celebrities from all over Earth, including Lars and Horn, were holding their own wine glasses and gathering in groups of twos and threes in every corner of the venue. They were either discussing loudly or exchanging opinions softly. Beautiful young ladies wearing gowns that showed off their figures and appearances to the fullest were also looking for the night that they had fallen in love with amidst the chatter. Especially when they saw the two young heirs of the Fard family and the Badwin family. These beautiful young ladies decisively took action and surrounded McGillis and Galio. How enviable! Sir McGillis and Sir Galio. As soon as you appear here, those beautiful young ladies will always be the first to come up to you. Looking at McGillis, who used a rather gentlemanly manner to get rid of the surrounding beautiful young ladies, and walked over, a black-haired young lady standing at the edge of the venue raised her wine glass slightly to greet McGillis. Mr. K. looking at the black-haired young man who had taken off the familiar black mask and revealed an unfamiliar yet familiar face. McGillis was first stunned, then revealed a friendly smile. Yes, it seems that my act of taking off my mask without permission has put you in a difficult position, Sir McGillis. The black-haired young man smiled lightly, glanced at the young ladies gathered at the side, and said jokingly, "Could it be that Sir McGillis is afraid that I will attract the attention of these beautiful and lovely young ladies? Haha, Mr. K, don't laugh at me. This is not a joke. If you can attract the attention of these beautiful young ladies here, it would be best." Mr. K heard this and could not help but smile bitterly. "Spare me. I'd rather face the enemy than face these young ladies. This is a big problem. Is it a problem?" McGillis repeated the adjectives that Mr. K used to describe the young girls. He smiled bitterly but did not say anything else. Perhaps, in his heart, he thought so too. "What are you guys talking about? It's rare to have a banquet. McGillis, don't you want to enjoy it? You don't look familiar at all, but your voice sounds very familiar. You're that annoying masked man, Mr. K." At this time, Galileo also came to this corner. Suddenly, this corner that no one paid attention to was noticed by most people because the heirs of the Fard and Barwin families had appeared at the same time. And the black-haired young man who was chatting happily with the heirs of the seven-star families had attracted the attention of most people. Who was he? This question became a question in everyone's mind. I think Mr. Galeo's suggestion is very good. Sir McGillis, now that most people's attention is on me, Sir McGillis, don't you want to take this opportunity to leave a beautiful memory? Mr. K casually glanced at the crowd and casually agreed with Galeo's suggestion. Look, McGillis, it's rare for me and this masked man to come to an agreement. Are you sure you don't want to give it a try? Looking at Mr. K and his good friend Galeo's suggestion, McGillis' mouth twitched slightly. He neither agreed nor disagreed. Fortunately, two figures appeared at the banquet and saved McGillis. It was a young, adorably dressed figure. It was a small figure in a wheelchair being slowly pushed into the banquet by a maid. The former was the eldest daughter of the Barwin family, the younger sister of the current heir, Galileo Barwin. She was also the fiancée of the heir of the Fard family, McGillis. Her name was Amelia Barwin. Since the day she was born, she was known by the name of one of the seven-star families, the Barwin family. But as she appeared, the small figure being pushed into the banquet by a maid in a wheelchair was very unfamiliar. She had a head of long flaxen hair that was combed beautifully. Her dress was appropriate and well-fitting. Her demeanor was gentle, and her delicate face. She was like a princess who walked out of a fairy tale. Cute and beautiful. But unfortunately, this fairy tale princess not only had to be pushed into the banquet hall by a maid in a wheelchair, but it seemed that her eyes could not see anything in front of her. Her eyes were closed from beginning to end. Who was she? Different people, but the same question filled everyone's mind as this young girl appeared beside Amelia Barwin. And this question was quickly answered. The three young men gathered in the corner of the banquet hall stepped forward and walked towards Amelia Barwin. The only surprising thing was that the one walking in front was the unfamiliar black-haired young man, not McGillis or Galileo. "Good evening, the fair and lovely lady Amelia Barwin. I'm Lucio Lamperugi. Thank you very much for taking care of my sister, Nunnally Lamperugi." Under everyone's gaze, the black-haired young man came in front of Amelia and bowed to the young Amelia in a friendly and solemn manner. The friendly and solemn etiquette stunned Amelia for a moment. Then she showed a bright smile and responded, "Hello, Your Excellency, Lucio Lamperugi. This is nothing. I also like Sister Nunnally very much, so you're welcome." Ever since Mr. K, Lucio found Nunnally, who was sleeping in a crystal coffin in a meteor fall area on Mars, and returned to Earth with the help of McGillis. The sleeping Nunnally was placed in the Bardo family's residence, waiting for the moment of awakening. Tonight was the day that Lilina would awaken from her slumber. After the black-haired young man nodded to Amelia, he moved his gaze and looked at his sister who had been separated from him since that day. "We are finally reunited, Nunnally. In the wheelchair, the blind girl gradually showed a gentle smile. Yeah, brother. Chapter 700. In the dark channel, full of wreckage and gravel, body bags wrapped in cold bodies were quietly sliding into the depths of the dark channel. Perhaps they had once been awe-inspiring in this waterway when they were alive, or perhaps they had trembled under the feet of experts and acted as accomplices to the evildoers. But in the face of death, they were all wrapped in body bags and silently slid into the deathly silent and cold void. This was a funeral that completely buried the Bruas pirates. Looking at the body bags that slid into the void, the history of the Bruas pirates also came to an end. And the people enslaved by the Bruas pirates and Bruas also ushered in liberation. However, due to the upcoming itinerary of the Ironflower Regiment, they were unable to bring the Valyrians who had been freed from the Bloas pirates to Earth. For this reason, after Olga asked for the opinion of Rey Minkai, he decided to hand over the 2 armored ships and the transport ship left by the Bruas pirates to the former Bruas pirates led by Akihiro's younger brother, Changhong Artran. Under the leadership of Akihiro's deputy, Dante Meguro, they would return to the headquarters on Mars first and make arrangements. They're far away. Akihiro, did you say goodbye? Outside the porthole, the engine fire that represented the return to the headquarters on Mars gradually became small and invisible. Raymond Kai's sigh also reached Akihiro's ears. Sir, sorry for troubling you. Akihiro was probably just a dull person. Even if he didn't react at that time, he gradually understood a little bit of the matter in retrospect afterwards. Troubling you? Why would I bother? Akihiro, don't think too much. It was just a game. Rei Minkai glanced at Akihiro's serious look and then smiled. Okay, go back and prepare. The body with only the skeleton should be arranged for you. Be mentally prepared. That's the same as Barbados, an airframe that's also known as Gundam. Akihiro was surprised. He didn't seem to have expected that such a body would be assigned to him. After all, when they retrieved Gauda Gusion, everyone was shocked by the black skeleton of Gauda Gusion. The originally smooth outer armor was completely peeled off, completely exposing the pitch-black skeleton that was wrapped in it. In the Ironflower Regiment, no one could imagine what kind of attack could perfectly peel off the outer armor without leaving any damage to the skeleton. Of course, this question would not be answered, because at that time, Gauda Gusion's opponent was the Long Fong Lion Style Zero. It was also because the battle between the two sides took place somewhere in the wreckage gravel belt that no one could see. That was why the long-fanged lion, State Zero, was able to use the Lambda Drive system from the all-metal world to easily defeat the Gundakin and dismantle its ridiculous armor. Are you saying that you don't like Gauda Gusion because he doesn't have any external armor? Akihiro. Looking at the surprised Akihiro, Rei Minkai was suddenly in a good mood and teased this dull boy. Especially in the Steelpula world and the previous Uncle version. Under the influence of Akihiro's memories, which still made up for the regrets in his life, Rei Minkai seemed to have more bad taste in his heart. No, I didn't mean it like that. It's just that, in this case, wouldn't that body be temporarily unable to move? Akihiro moved his mouth and said his thoughts hesitantly. Is that it? Don't worry. After we arrive at the Colonial Satellite Group, Nemes will communicate with the Daiwas branch in .6 to modify Gauda Gusion. Don't worry. It won't take a long time. .6? Akihiro thought for a while and subconsciously looked at the void where the engine fire of the assault armored ship returning to the Mars headquarters could no longer be seen. He nodded silently. Finally, after a series of events, the Ironflower Regiment finally reached the second half of the journey. 2. It seems that history will repeat itself. In the courtyard where sunlight scattered, a girl in a dress was sitting quietly in a wheelchair, enjoying the warmth brought by the sun. Perhaps, for the girl, this simple thing had not been enjoyed for a long time. She didn't know where this feeling came from. She only knew that on a certain dark night, she should have been at home, but she was startled awake by a familiar yet completely different voice. Then, she lost all sense of the outside world, until she once again heard her older brother, Lucio's voice. "Sisterly Nolly, how do you feel? Is there any discomfort?" A light breeze blew in the courtyard, bringing the two figures into the courtyard. From a young voice, it could be heard that this was the first friend the girl made after she woke up. A girl who was much younger than her, but was already engaged to someone else. Amelia Bardown. She seemed to be the daughter of the Badwin family, a seven-star family. Towards this so-called seven-star family, Linali was very confused. In the world she was familiar with, there didn't seem to be any seven-star family. "What's wrong? Sister Linali, are you feeling unwell? Or is the wind too strong here?" Seeing that the girl in the wheelchair did not respond, the girl in the dress walked over to the wheelchair and carefully looked at the girl's face. "No, I'm fine. It's just that I'm thinking too much. Thank you for your concern, Amelia." Linali smiled lightly. Unexpectedly, that gentle smile made Amelia's face turn red, and she subconsciously sighed. "It's really beautiful. How great would it be if Sisterly Lena could see with your eyes?" After saying that, Amelia was stunned, because from the first day Linali came to the Badwin family, Amelia knew that the girl in front of her was not only unable to walk, but also unable to see anything. "Sorry." Amelia hurriedly apologized, but Linali raised her right hand and gently stopped her. "Amelia, you don't have to care. I'm already used to it. Compared to this, have you seen my brother?" Amelia's attention was immediately diverted by Linali. The girl slightly puffed up her cheeks and complained to the girl in dissatisfaction. "Sister Linali, don't you know? In the morning, my good-for-nothing brother suddenly dragged Lucio out of the house. I heard that they were going to some colonial satellite. When they met me at the door, Lucio even asked me to apologize to you. Is that so? Brother is going to be busy again." Linali seemed to be a little disappointed. Perhaps it was the reluctance to part after being separated for a long time. This made Amelia couldn't help but pull Linali's right hand and comforted her. "Sister Linali, don't worry. Maybe my useless brother just wants Lucio to help him. They will be back soon. And I know, brother will be back soon." At the same time, in Lars Horn spaceport in geostationary orbit, two figures walked down from the shuttle one after the other. They followed the instructions and walked towards the port in another area. There, the cruiser belonging to McGillis and Galio was parked. Now, since McGillis was on vacation, Galio naturally became the temporary captain of the cruiser. "Why, Sir Galio, you pulled me here from Earth early in the morning just to see you show off your might in the so-called exercise?" Looking at Galio, striding in front, the black-haired boy behind him mercilessly mocked the man who pulled him from the warm Earth early in the morning to this cold universe. "Yes, exercise, exercise. It's just a name. Lulu. No, Mr. K, with your intelligence, I'm sure you've already guessed what I'm thinking." Galio stopped. When he wanted to directly call the other person's name, he suddenly changed the way he addressed him. "In name? I didn't expect Sir Galio, as the heir of Bardawin, to be interested in these things. What? Do you lack merit?" The black-haired boy raised his eyebrows and casually leaned against the wall. From his tone, it was not difficult for Galio to hear that he was mocking his actions. As the heir of the Bardawin family, one of the seven-star families, Galio didn't need to get involved in these messy things at all. He only needed to follow the mission given to him by the family when the time was right, and he would be able to ascend to the top seat of Lars Horn. "No, this is not getting involved. Mr. K, this is a battle to wipe away our shame. Those space rats on Mars made us suffer such humiliation. They must pay the price." Now, under the surveillance of McGillis's spies, that group of space rats entered the colonial satellite group. Galio didn't care. No, it should be said that he was already immune to the black-haired boy's mockery. Lucio looked at Galio, who spoke his thoughts calmly. He lowered his eyes slightly and smiled. "A battle to wipe away our shame?" From the looks of it, it did seem to be the case. But are you ready for it? That airframe will definitely appear. That body... Galio frowned slightly. That's right. Lucio's words were not wrong. although that terrifying body didn't appear many times. Every time it appeared, it would rush into the battlefield with a posture that was enough to shatter Galio's understanding of MS and destroy the opponent easily. No matter how hard Galio searched for information when he returned to the headquarters of Gjallarhorn, and how he flipped through the documents passed down from the era of the sacrificial war, there was only one result. The mysterious body that had the terrifying speed of most bodies did not exist in Lars Horn's literature, nor in any of the folklore about the sacrificial war on Earth. It was as if this Mecha that had left a deep impression on everyone as soon as it appeared had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. But even if that body is here, Lars Horn, no, I will definitely go. This is a battle to wipe away our shame. Galio was silent for a moment. In the face of the fog that could not be cleared, he still made the same decision. Is that so? Since it's a battle to wipe away our shame, then please hurry up, Mr. Galio. Mr. McGillis is not the kind of person who will wait for the holidays to end. Leluxio didn't want to, or rather, he didn't have the intention to stop Galio's actions. While expressing his opinion, he also said some meaningful words. However, Galio seemed to misunderstand Lucio's meaning. Yeah, after all, my sister is very clingy. Although she is McGillis' fiancée, McGillis must be worried about this. So, before McGillis is worried, let's solve this matter as soon as possible. You're right. Starting from Mars, halfway to Jupiter, and then from Jupiter to Earth, after a journey that exceeded expectations, they finally arrived at the end. Olga, who was standing on the bridge of the Fishfire vessel, looked at the approaching colonial satellite and was slightly relieved. Don't be too relaxed. Olga, this is already within the range of the Earth. Lei Minkai looked at Eugene, Sino, and the others who were pointing at the cylindrical colonial satellite in the distance and cheering, and reminded Olga. Rei Minkai knew that before this. Minace should have also reminded Olga. But there were some things that Minace didn't know and couldn't give advice. Because even Minace himself didn't know these things. Are you talking about the difference between the Earth and the outer circle? Brother Minace has already mentioned this to me. I'll let everyone pay attention. Sure enough, after Rei Minkai reminded her, Olga took the initiative to repeat what Minace told them. This was not surprising. Rei Minkai pointed outside. Olga was confused, but she still followed Rei Minkai and left the bridge. The two people who left didn't seem to attract the attention of Eugene, Seno, and the others. Even if someone noticed, it was only 3 suns and moon alone. And with 3 suns and moon's personality, even if they were confused, it would disappear in the next second. They would wait for Olga to speak, and then they would go and beat the enemy. The moment the automatic door isolated the noise of the bridge, Olga looked up at Rei Minkai and waited for Rei Minkai to continue. Olga, be prepared to fight the enemy. What surprised Olga was that the first thing Rei Minkai asked him to do was to prepare for battle. Is it Lars Horn? No. Chapter 701. The guiding spaceship from Dot 2 slowly flew to Yuhua's side. A passionate message was transmitted from the guiding spaceship to Yuhua's bridge and into the ears of Olga and the others. They were praises for the hero, and they were not stingy with their words of praise. However, compared to Eugene and the others who were flattered, Olga's face gradually became serious. Everything was going according to what Rei Minkai had told him in private. The Iron Flower Regiment's transportation mission that Divaz had entrusted to them was not mineral resources or daily necessities. Instead, it was a terrifying item that could affect the subsequent development of the situation. Yes, terrifying object. Although Rei Minkai didn't say it explicitly, and Olga didn't personally check what the goods in Yuhua's warehouse were. But under Rei Minkai's hint, Olga already guessed something. A clue that even Olga himself couldn't believe. Your Excellency, is this your test for me? Logically speaking, if the matter in front of the Iron Flower Regiment was as serious as Olga imagined, as a shareholder, Rei Minkai wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. However, under such circumstances, Rei Minkai, Lux, and Gedelia left Yuhua and went to dot 3 before Yuhua went to dot 2. In the name of shopping, Olga recalled the meaningful look that Ray Minkai gave him before he left. Olga couldn't bring himself to ask for help from Ray Minkai. Looking at dot 2 that gradually became bigger and clearer in front of him, Olga's mind kept replaying everything that had happened since the departure from Jupiter. No, since the departure from Mars. No. Suddenly, Olga's mind was shaken. A condition that he had never thought of popped out from the depths of his mind, as if it was the work of gods and demons. If Gedelia Alana Bernstein, the revolutionary girl regarded as the hope of the Martians, is man-made, then this thought kept rolling in Olga's mind, and with this assumption as the center, it quickly spread to all the possible hypotheses and pushed forward until it pointed to a terrifying fact. Ironflower Regiment. Perhaps in the near future, he would become a sacrifice in this accident driven by an invisible hand. Thinking of this, Olga's body trembled, and a trace of horror appeared in his eyes. He perhaps understood. He finally understood why Lei Minkai had left first, and why he had given him a meaningful look before he left. As his enlightened thoughts continued to expand and move forward, a relieved and confident smile quietly appeared on Olga's face. Is that so? Is that so? Mr. Ray Minkai, are you really testing me? Testing whether I can be the leader of the Ironflower Regiment? The smile on Olga's face gradually deepened, and his laughter grew louder and louder. It was so loud that Eugene and the others were shocked and looked at Olga in unison. Good. Very good. That's it. Everyone, now let's complete the last mission before going to Earth. Eugene and the others looked at each other in confusion. They couldn't understand why Olga had become so enthusiastic, but they still waved their fists and loudly echoed their leader's words. Oh, mission complete. On the other side, Ray Minkai, Lakis, and the others, who left Yui first, also set foot on the port of dot 3. Is this dot 3? It looks pretty good. Atlas and Gedelia, who set foot on a colonial satellite for the first time, looked at the city built around the inner wall in surprise. No matter how they looked up, they could definitely see the buildings above their heads, as well as the cars moving along the road. It was their first time seeing such a wonderful scene. As for Ray Minkai and Lakis, they didn't find it strange to see them. Ray Minkai aside, Lakis, who had lived on a colonial satellite since she was young, was already used to everything in front of her. Okay, we'll have plenty of chances to see it in the future. Today, let's hurry up and complete the mission. Lux clapped her hands, and after attracting Atlas and Gedelia's attention, she began to assign the missions. Although Ray Minkai only needed to ask, and Olga wouldn't refuse his request, Ray Minkai still used the reason of needing to buy cleaning supplies to clean the ship's environment as an excuse to leave Yuhua early. Therefore, everyone's mission was to split up and buy the items they were responsible for according to the list. Thus, the people who set foot on dot 3 split into 3 groups and went about their own business. Seeing Gedelia, Fumitin, Trisun, and Atlas, who volunteered to follow Biscat to see his brother, Ray Minkai and Lakis looked at each other and returned to the port. Kai, is something going to happen here? Although Lakis didn't say it out loud, she already knew some things. Ray Minkai didn't take the initiative to tell her this, but Lakis deduced it based on what she saw. It must be noted that the atmosphere above dot 3 wasn't too friendly. When Ray Minkai, Lakis, and the others appeared at dot 3's port, the gazes around them were not as vigilant as when they saw strangers coming from afar. Instead, they were more cautious and distant. Probably, but the main location might not be here. Ray Minkai secretly scanned the surroundings and discovered that there were at least 3 pairs of eyes hidden in the dark watching them. This formation probably couldn't be considered guarding against outsiders. Ironflower Regiment. Lakis noticed Ray Minkai's action, but nodded at Ray Minkai without batting an eyelid. In an instant, the two of them tacitly linked arms and pointed at the port. Then, they casually found an excuse to turn around and leave the port, walking toward the commercial district. From afar, it was as if they were a couple who were amazed by something they had never seen before and couldn't help but have fun. Have we been discovered? In the shadows, a graceful figure sized up the few corners that could possibly be her peers and smiled slightly. As expected of the night that L cares about. This vigilance is indeed enough to make L more alert. Then let's wait and see. As a high-end residential district and the commercial district built around it, it was indeed more prosperous and lively than Mars Christ District. Just from the expressions and clothes of the pedestrians, it could be seen that the standard of living here was far higher than Mars Christ District. Looking at the well-dressed people coming and going, Lakis didn't have much surprise on her face. Instead, she revealed a trace of seriousness. Although the conversation between the two at the port was affected by the outside world and didn't continue, Lakis already knew about the surging movements hidden in the shadows of these colonial satellites. The prosperous scene in front of her would probably turn into nothing soon. Lakis looked at Lei Mingkai, who was holding her little hand. The corners of her mouth twitched, but she didn't say anything. Lakis, there's a small shop in front. Let's go in and have a seat. Lei Mingkai had already noticed Lakis's strange behavior. However, he didn't say anything. As Lakis climbed, Lei Mingkai believed that she could understand and make her own decision. And in front of them, there was a long-lost friend waiting for them. Ding! As the wooden door was pushed open, the bell hanging on the corner of the door also shook. Looking around, it was an elegantly decorated tea house. Other than the necessary tea set, there were only a few portraits on the wall and ribbons used as decoration. At first glance, the whole tea house looked very simple and quiet. Long time no see. My friend, are you interested in coming over for a drink? Seeing Lei Mingkai and Lakis walk into the tea house, the black-haired young man sitting at the innermost table of the tea house also stood up and invited them. Then, as if he wanted to gain the trust of Lei Mingkai, the black-haired young man continued, "Don't worry, the owner of this tea house has already been sent out by me. Now, there's only me and two distinguished guests in this tea house." The black-haired young man who invited them was none other than Lu Lucio, who met Lei Mingkai on Mars nearly half a year ago. What Lei Mingkai didn't expect was that Lu Lucio would appear in Dot 3 at this time. The mystery behind this wasn't that simple, right? Long time no see. Lu Lucio, I didn't expect you to be here. Lei Mingkai, who was familiar with Lu Lucio's character, didn't think too much about it. He quickly accepted Lu Lucio's invitation and sat opposite him. Hee, long time no see. Your Highness, aren't you going to sit here? The seats here are enough for 3 people. Lu Lucio smiled and looked at Lakis, who still hadn't sat down. My name is Lakis Klein. I'm not a princess. Your Highness. Lakis frowned slightly, but she still sat down next to Lei Mingkai. Is that so? But this guy always has all kinds of princesses around him. Lu Lucio didn't care about Lakis's rebuttal. Instead, he casually threw the conflict to Lei Mingkai. In the end, Lu Lucio was greatly disappointed. This was because Lux wasn't angered by Lu Lucio's seemingly normal words that were actually meant to secretly provoke conflict. Instead, she nodded her head calmly. No, it should be said that she nodded in agreement. Your Highness is right. I feel the same way. Her expression of great agreement immediately gave Lei Mingkai a headache. At the same time, Lu Lucio was stunned. Ha 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 ha. Interesting. Interesting. Really interesting. As expected of the Knight of Guardian. Truly amazing. Amidst Lu Lucio's laughter, Lei Mingkai frowned. He wanted to retort, but couldn't find a reason to. In the end, he could only try to change the topic. All right, since you're here, does that mean you found the person you're looking for? Looking at Lu Lucio, Lei Mingkai thought of the person he saw in that space. That delicate and pitiful face that made people feel sorry for her. Lu Lucio nodded, his face revealing an excited expression. Yes, I've finally found her. I've finally found Lilina. Lei Mingkai, this is all thanks to you. Is that so? Wait. Lei Mingkai, who spoke subconsciously, suddenly stood up. He remembered. He remembered very clearly. In the instant that he escaped from that space, the face that he saw was not Nunnally at all. Definitely not. Why did Lu Lucio insist that it was Lilina? That's Lilina? The Lena V. Britannia that not only you, but even the Britannia Empire is looking for. A look of disbelief appeared on Rei Minkai's face. Lucio nodded with a calm expression. Yes, the person I found in that space is Lena. Other than her, I haven't seen anyone else. Lucio's expression was serious, and his tone was very firm, making it impossible for others to see any clues. But Rei Minkai faintly felt a trace of strangeness. A trace of strangeness that he didn't know where to start from. Rei Minkai tried to analyze this trace of strangeness while casually asking, "Is that so? Then what about Lena? I wonder where Lena is now. If possible, I'd like to see her." But unexpectedly, such a casual sentence was caught by Lucio. "Lena? She's in a good condition now. She's already woken up from a long sleep. But what kind of identity are you going to use to see her? You have to know, before that, Lena has never seen you." Pausing, Lucio's eyes revealed a trace of ridicule. Is it the identity of the Empire's knight captain? Or is it the identity of the husband of Lena's royal sister, Empress Euphemia L. Britannia? Pfft. Cough, cough. Suddenly, Lucio's casual words almost made Rei Minkai, the Empire's knight captain, choke to death. You, Lucio, it seems that after reuniting with your sister, you're in a good mood. You can even make such a joke. But your appearance here this time, I'm afraid it's not as simple as catching up, right? What made Lucio feel regretful was that the good show that was supposed to happen disappeared like smoke under Lux's indifference. Oof. Forget it. In the blink of an eye, Lucio put away the idea of watching Rei Minkai's good show. Rei Minkai, on Earth, there's the arrangement of the Parliament of Destiny. Suddenly, the atmosphere took a turn for the worse. The sky above the tea house was shrouded in heavy air pressure. What Rei Minkai didn't expect was that Lucio actually said the name of the Parliament of Destiny. In addition, I inherited his seat. Now, I'm a member of the Parliament of Destiny, Mr. K. Chapter 702. The Parliament of Destiny. The Parliament of Destiny. Rei Minkai knew very well what these two titles symbolized. What surprised Rei Minkai was that Lucio would admit so frankly that he had become one of them. Why? Is it unexpected? A playful smile appeared on Lucio's face. Yes, unexpected. Very unexpected. Rei Minkai slowly took in a deep breath and sighed. That's right. Although we had a hunch that we would meet you in other worlds after you disappeared, we didn't expect you to become one of them. Moreover, it's as his successor. Naturally, he was the one who took everything away from Lucio. Later, under the joint efforts of Rei Minkai and Lucio, they killed Emperor Lucio in one fell swoop. A young man from a different time and space, but also Lucio v. Britannia. No, this is not an accident. Rei Minkai, I am Lucio Lamperugi, but I'm also Lucio v. Britannia. Inheriting his legacy, or becoming him, is inevitable. After saying this sentence lightly, Lucio seemed to have lost the intention to continue the conversation. Okay, let's stop talking about the past. Knight, be vigilant. Here, it's not as simple as you think. The arrangements that the Parliament of Destiny buried on Earth have begun to move. Your arrival is nothing more than an accident. After that, Lucio got up and prepared to leave. You are not Lucio Lamperugi. However, before Lucio could take a few steps, Rei Minkai's words suddenly made Lucio stop. Oh, Knight, why do you think so? Lucio turned around and looked at Rei Minkai with interest. It seemed that he was looking forward to something. Eyes. Rei Minkai looked at Lucio without fear. Anyone who was familiar with Lucio Lampero would know that under any circumstances, it was best not to look at Lucio in the eye. Otherwise, without knowing or even being aware of it, one would succumb to Lucio, who had the power of GASS. Eyes. Lucio was taken aback, then laughed. The carefree laughter gradually changed from a slightly calm young man's voice, distorted, until it became a clear and pleasant female voice. It's really delightful. You're worthy of being the knight he valued. I didn't expect you to really see the difference between us. The contrast between Lu Lucio's face and a woman's voice made Lei Minkai frown for a moment before relaxing his brows. You're not Lu Lucio. You should be C, the witch who has been following Lu Lucio. You guessed right. The knight who protects the princess. When the laughter sounded again, the mask disguised as Lu Lucio was taken off, revealing the lustrous emerald green hair and a delicate face. CC, the witch who has the power of code and can give others the power of GASS. After the Britannia Empire's rebellion, and after Euphemia ascended the throne, she disappeared with Lu Lucio. Perhaps Ray Minkai should have thought of this long ago. On Mars, from the moment he met Lu Lucio, this mysterious witch was probably already around Lu Lucio, watching everything with her eyes. Don't worry, I don't mean any harm. Today, I'm just fulfilling that guy's request. At the same time, under the guidance of the spaceship, the docked Fishfire welcomed the intense loading and unloading industry. However, as the leader of the Ironflower Regiment, Olga only brought Eugene and the female accountant, Maribid Stapleton, who had been very low-key since her arrival and was almost overshadowed by Lakis, down the Fishfire together and met with the staff of Datu. This Maribid Stapleton had come at the behest of Mahkumid. However, her arrival didn't cause any disturbance in Yuhua. On the contrary, she seemed to have received some instructions. She always buried herself in her work and never participated in any activities outside of work. It was as if she had placed herself outside of the core team of the Ironflower Regiment. For this, Olga was happy to be relaxed. After all, no matter who it was, they didn't like people who were sent by Divac to monitor them appearing in front of them. I didn't expect you to be from the Ironflower Regiment. You're even younger than we thought. Seeing Olga and Eugene's young faces, the staff member of Dot 2 was surprised. Even though Olga and Eugene had experienced many battles before they came to the Earth, they were still very strong. But the smoke from the battles couldn't hide Olga and Eugene's overly young faces. What? Is the truth that the Ironflower Regiment is made up of young guys that surprised you? Eugene was very unhappy. She didn't like the fact that the staff used her and her friends' ages to talk about things. No, I didn't mean that. I just think the legendary heroes are much younger than we thought. Heroes? Hearing the staff's apology, Olga frowned slightly. Sure enough, there was a hidden truth that they didn't know. Olga was very clear about the composition of the Ironflower Regiment, including herself. If not for Lei Mingkai's previous reminder, perhaps Olga would have been just like Eugene, flattered by the other party's flattery. But now, Olga had other thoughts. Sorry. Olga raised her hand to stop the conversation between Eugene and the staff, and said calmly, after a long voyage, Yuhua is about to undergo maintenance. I need to go back and arrange the maintenance. So, I'll have to rely on you for the loading and unloading work. Although this reason was a bit abrupt, the staff couldn't find any fault with it. They knew about the legend of the Ironflower Regiment. No matter how the legend spread here, and what kind of explanation there was, as long as they saw the scars on Yuhua, they would probably subconsciously associate it with the tragic battles described in the legend of the Ironflower Regiment. That's true. After all, everyone in the Ironflower Regiment fought with the damn Lars Horn all the way here. After the staff looked at each other, they also agreed with Olga's excuse. Olga let out a sigh of relief when the short meeting ended so smoothly, but the sense of urgency in his heart also became heavier. What's wrong? Olga, obviously, we still have a next step of the handover. Eugene's confusion also got the approval of the female accountant next to her. Yes, Regiment Commander. Our next step of the handover still needs to be signed by both sides to take effect. Mary Bede also said the same, but the two's confusion couldn't change Olga's mind. No, there's no need for the next step of the handover. Now, we must immediately return to Yuhua and gather everyone to prepare for the next emergency. What? Emergency? Eugene and Mary Bede said in surprise together. Yes, emergency. The water here is very deep. We must be prepared. Just as Olga brought Eugene and Mary Bede out of the warehouse and turned to the plank road to Yuhua, an armored vehicle suddenly appeared in everyone's sight. It was Lars Horn of Gorda. As long as one saw the iconic helmet and the uniform with the Lars Horn of Gorda logo, they would immediately recognize the armed organization that had ruled human society for hundreds of years. Lars Horn of Gorda. Eugene was shocked and immediately moved closer to Olga subconsciously, and Mary Bede, who reacted a step slower, was pulled to a corner by Olga to avoid being discovered by the armored vehicle that was coming this way. Don't make a sound. It's Lars Horn of Gorda. Seeing the armored vehicle that drove past in front of them and didn't seem to discover them, Olga's heart couldn't help but feel a sense of realization. Olga, don't talk first. We must hurry back to Yuhua now. However, before they could take a step, a burst of gunfire suddenly sounded, constantly hovering above Olga and the others. Don't look back. Hurry, Olga shouted coldly. Eugene and Mary Bede quickly followed Olga's footsteps. This was an attack. No, this was an attack that had been planned for a long time. Olga finally understood the meaning of Lei Mingkai's gaze as he listened to the increasingly intense gunshots behind him and the low growls coming from the road in front of him. The Iron Flower Regiment was used as a tool. Even if the Iron Flower Regiment had become a brother organization with Tabans on Jupiter, but on a certain level, it was still a chess piece that could be discarded at any time by those big shots. Now, the battle that was happening behind them was just like that. Your Excellency, is it the same on your side? The atmosphere in the city suddenly became a little cold. Moreover, it also became a little anxious and irritated. Kai, there's a battle over there with that group of kids. The moment Ray Mingkai and Lakis walked out of the tea house, State Zero's voice sounded. As expected, Ray Mingkai turned to look at the tea house, looking at the figure hidden behind the window, and couldn't help but wonder if he was also involved in the battle that happened in Datu. Kai, has it started? Lakis, who noticed the change in the atmosphere, looked around. Yes, it has started in Datu. Let's hurry back. The laborers who resented the oppression from the upper class for a long time would definitely not let go of this high-end community and the bustling business district that was built around it. Let's go. CC, who was sitting in the tea house, saw the two of them leave in a hurry. The witch naturally knew what was going to happen next, but she would not and had no reason to stop it from happening. Has it started? The plan of those lunatics in the Apocalypse Council. After casually pouring himself a cup of fragrant black tea, CC sipped it slowly while looking at the windowsill where panicked passers-by passed by from time to time. Da-da-da-da. Gunshots rang out like a storm. Amid the roars of the oppressed laborers, the whistling bullets were shot at the soldiers of Gallowhorn, who had exposed their long-planned plan under the pretext of inspecting the goods. Although the training of the laborers was far less than the training of Lars Horn soldiers, as the saying went, random fists can kill an old master. The number of laborers far exceeded the number of Lars Horn soldiers who came to inspect the goods. Moreover, when inspecting the goods, the laborers were in groups of 2 or 3. They stood on the ground, on the shelves, and even on both sides of the door. Therefore, the moment the battle broke out, Lars Horn soldiers who were protected by armored personnel carriers were suppressed by bullets from all directions and could only retreat into the armored personnel carriers to ask for help. Boom! As the armored personnel carriers were destroyed, the battle finally reached its climax. Lars Horn's mobile soldiers rushed in. Woo-woo! Amidst the shrill air defense sirens, there seemed to be a faint explosion at the port of Dot 3. Kai, it has spread here. We must speed up. Lakis. Ray Mingkai looked at the people around him who were frightened by the air defense sirens and nodded. Next, because of the riot that happened in Dot 3, the port would be blocked. Then, Lars Horn's fleet station nearby would use the excuse of suppressing the riot as an excuse to leave. This is a farce that has been planned for a long time. On the other side of the city, Gedelia and Fumiton were staying in a hotel that was not affected by the riot for the time being. 3 suns and moons, who were supposed to be with them, temporarily left because they had a contact fish fire. Miss, please focus. I'm afraid something unexpected has happened here. Fumitin looked at the panicked crowd outside the window and the faint smoke rising from the port area. This was a battle. A battle to bury Gedelia Lana Bernstein, the revolutionary girl who was regarded as the hope of the Martians. Before arriving on Earth, Fumitin, who controlled Fishfire's external communication channel, had already received an order. An order about the ultimate fate of Gedelia Lana Bernstein. The pair of hands hidden behind the scenes instructed Fumitin to ensure that Gedelia Lana Bernstein, the girl who symbolized hope, was shot to death by Lars Horn in the riot in .3. Fumitin hesitated in the face of such an order. Furthermore, Fumitin had a feeling that even if he acted according to the order, he would still fail. This was a woman's intuition. Even though it was a bit mysterious, Fumitin believed in his heart. Suddenly, a figure carrying a pink-haired girl and a princess carry appeared in front of Fumitin. At this moment, Fumitin seemed to have found the answer. Don't tell me he's the reason Gedelia died here. Chapter 703. In a corner next to the hotel where Gedelia and the others were staying, a man with a golden mask and long silver-gray hair stood there, staring at the deserted door. According to the original plan, he wanted to meet Gedelia Lana Bernstein. This revolutionary girl was regarded as the hope of the Martians. No, it should be said that she was regarded as the hope of all humans who had heard of her deeds. However, just a few minutes ago, the arrival of a man and a woman made him dispel this idea. Because he knew that as long as the man and woman appeared here, what he was worried about would not happen. Gedelia Lana Bernstein, the girl who was regarded as the hope, would not sacrifice herself to save others. As long as this was the case, the future he hoped for would happen. Sure enough, it's just as you expected. Mr. K, the night you spoke of really appeared. After the man smiled, he glanced at the deserted door again, then turned and left. Although he had lost the fun of seeing Gedelia and exposing the traitorous maid who had been by her side all this while and acted like a loyal servant on the surface, he had still achieved his goal in the end. Then, it's time for me to leave here. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good for me to appear in public like this after the port is sealed off. In the shadows, the tall man's back gradually disappeared, leaving only the eyes scanning the surrounding corners. Did he leave? Standing by the window of the aisle, Ray Minkai withdrew his gaze from searching the surrounding streets. Just now, he noticed that someone was looking here, but that gaze quickly disappeared. Moreover, Ray Minkai did not detect any malice from it. Kai, before we arrived, Mitsui and you left here first. They seem to be looking for Biscat and Atlas who lost contact. When Lake's voice came, she brought the news of Mitsui and you. Looking back, in addition to Lakis, Gedelia and Fumitin also followed behind Lakis. Ray Minkai nodded slightly, but he did not look at Gedelia. Instead, he looked at Fumitin. Fumitin, have you made the arrangements on your side? Gedelia's words were nothing out of the ordinary, but they set off 1,000 waves in Fumitin's heart. She lost her usual calmness and fell into a rare daze. Fumitin? Vermitten, what are you thinking about? Gedelia, who did not suspect anything, called out to Fumitin a few times, but she could not wake him up. Gedelia, you don't have to worry. Perhaps Fumitin is just thinking about his next move. Lux took Gedelia's hand and comforted her for a while before giving Ray Minkai a look. Apart from Gedelia, who had no idea what was going on, everyone present knew of Fumitin's plan. After a while, Fumitin, who had fallen into silence, suddenly woke up. Fortunately, Fumitin's control over his own body was strong enough. The moment Fumitin snapped out of his stupor, all the shock and uneasiness he felt when Ray Minkai exposed the scheme had been buried deep in his mind. He never revealed it, and it was as if he had never seen it before. Yes, the only way we can leave here is to get to the port as soon as possible. Otherwise, in the worst-case scenario, we will be trapped in .3, waiting for the results of the search of this colonial satellite by the fleet sent by Gallahorn. Then, we have to leave here immediately? Then, what about Atlas and Biscat? There's still 3 suns and moons. When Gedelia heard this, She hurriedly spoke. Unexpectedly, Ray Minkai stopped her. No, Gudelia. You don't have to worry about Atlas and Biscat, 3 suns and moons. Before we came here, someone had already gone to save them. It doesn't matter if they have already fallen into Lars Horn's hands. Ray Minkai stunned Gudelia. Could it be that your excellency had anticipated this from the very beginning? Even Gudelia herself found it hard to believe when she thought of this. However, if Ray Minkai did not expect this chaos in advance, he probably would not have been prepared in advance. When Atlas and Biscat fell into Lars Horn's trap, he would not have sent out his already tight manpower. No, this is not a prediction. Gudelia. Ray Minkai glanced at Gudelia, then looked out the window again. Behind the buildings not far away, there were several more smoke columns rising into the air. Furthermore, these pillars of smoke were even closer to Ray Minkai, Lux, Gudelia, and Fumiton's hotel. Gudelia, this is bound to happen. Ow! Gudelia could not believe Ray Minkai's words. When she came to Dot 3, she saw a prosperous commercial district. This is a bustling city, just like Mars, built with the blood and tears of countless laborers. Gudelia Lana Bernstein. Gudelia Lana Bernstein, who is known by the world as the revolutionary girl who can bring hope to the exploited people, come here in person and come to this city that looks prosperous on the outside, but is actually built with the blood and tears of countless laborers. What do you think the oppressed and exploited people will think? Pausing for a moment, Ray Minkai turned around and exchanged glances with Lakis. Especially before you and the Ironflower Regiment arrived here, the story of you, Gudelia Lana Bernstein, has already spread among the oppressed and exploited people. Perhaps now, countless people are waiting for you to appear in front of the camera, just like the July conference, and lead the people here to roar angrily against the evil that oppresses and exploits them. Gudelia was silent. She had no idea that there was such a secret behind her arrival. If what Ray Minkai said was true, then the most fundamental reason for the turmoil in this colonial satellite group, named Dot, was probably her arrival. Just when Gudelia was feeling confused and anxious, Lux's voice made her look at Fumiton again. No, Gudelia, you don't have to blame yourself. This is just a conspiracy that happened at the right time. Right, Fumiton? No matter how intense the turmoil inside the colonial satellite was, this tumbler-shaped colonial satellite that allowed humans to survive in the universe still rotated slowly at its pace. It was not disturbed by the internal turmoil at all, and even by Lars Horn's battleships that gradually appeared from the vast space and surrounded it. How's Mr. K's preparation? Galio, who returned to Naku from the bridge, looked at the purple-blue body that once belonged to him, but was now handed over to someone else. The black-haired man who received the purple-blue body stood there. It looks good. But is it really okay for you to hand over Schwalberg to me? Speaking of which, this is also your body. The black-haired young man glanced at the body that already belonged to him and chuckled. No, there's nothing wrong with this. Also, I've also taken out my family's treasures. Galio did not care about handing over Schwalberg to the black-haired young man. Instead, he had great expectations for the treasures that he found in his family's warehouse. Gauda Simone. This was the Gauda skeleton body that was ranked 66th among the 72 demon god bodies, known as Gauda. It was known by the world at the victory parade after the end of the sacrificial war, and then it was sealed by the Bardovan family, one of the 7-star families at that time. Until now, it was dug out from the deepest part of the warehouse by Galio, the current heir of the Bardovan family. This is really confusing. Mr. K, don't you think it's strange that such an ancient mech would once again enter the battlefield for actual combat? Galio came to the black-haired young man, Lou Lucio, and looked up at Gauda Simone that stopped behind Schwalberg. Strange? Haha, Mr. Galio, no matter how old it is, a weapon is still a weapon. Before its structure is completely withered, its essence will always be to kill and take away the enemy's life. Lou Lucio, on the other hand, was not as sentimental. For him, whether it was Lou Lucio Lamperugi or Emperor Lou Lucio V, Britannia, their memories of weapons were the same. Weapons that could kill enemies would not be differentiated by age. The only thing that differentiated them was whether they could take away the enemy's life. Can it kill the enemy? Galileo pondered for a moment and then laughed. Ha ha, that's true. I was too obsessed. That's right. It doesn't matter if Gauda Simone is an antique passed down from the era of the sacrificial war. The one standing in front of me now is not an antique lying in the depths of the warehouse, but the real Gauda Simone. That's right. Lucio nodded slightly. Then, Galileo changed the topic. Right? We can't attack yet. Those guys at the Control Bureau seem to be planning something. Luring the snake out of its hole. Although Galileo didn't say it explicitly, Lucio already knew the truth behind the whole incident. Otherwise, he wouldn't have secretly asked CC to go to Dort 3 to contact Ray Minkai. However, in front of Galileo, Lucio had to pretend that he had thought it through carefully before seeing the truth behind it. Yes, the atmosphere inside doesn't seem to have reached its limit. Galileo didn't doubt him and casually told him what he had heard in the bridge. As the successor of the 7-star Baldur family, as long as Galileo spoke, no one in Larshorn would dare to deny him. Therefore, in order to make Galileo give up the idea of directly entering Dort 3, the captain of the cruiser racked his brains and used indirect methods to make Galileo give up on the idea of rushing in and taking care of the Ironflower Regiment. Are you still using these old tricks? I didn't expect that as the center of power for Larshorn, we still need to use such shameless methods and tricks. The people at the Control Bureau are really despicable. Lucio sneered a few times, which made the crew not far away look over. However, when they saw Galileo standing next to Lucio, they immediately turned around and lowered their heads to focus on their work. Despicable? Indeed. Mr. K, I realize that there are some things that we still feel the same way about. The corners of Galileo's mouth twitched, and he agreed with Lucio's description of the Control Bureau. Is that so? Lucio glanced at Galileo. Is it because of this that you want to reform this organization that has long since withered? But don't be careless. Mr. Galileo. Galileo raised his eyebrows when he heard this. He raised his hand to smooth out his messy hair and replied confidently, yes, of course. While Galileo and Lucio were talking about the despicable methods used by the Control Bureau, Larshorn's troops, who had entered Dort 3 to secretly investigate, had already spread out. In the building controlled by this troop, they captured the girl who was said to be Gudelia Lana Bernstein and members of the Ironflower Regiment. In order to get the information they wanted, the Larshorn soldiers in charge of the interrogation didn't care about taboos. Instead, they directly put the girl on the table and used a show of strength to intimidate the revolutionary girl, Gudelia Lana Bernstein. However, not only did their intimidation not work, but it also strengthened the will of Gudelia Lana Bernstein. No matter what Larshorn did to her, she still didn't speak. She didn't even admit that she was Gudelia Lana Bernstein. TSK, she's really stubborn. How about we send her back to the base? If it was over there would be tools and medicine. We can relax a bit. The soldiers in charge of the interrogation seemed to have lost their patience. If it weren't for the fact that they had to take certain things into consideration, the two Gjallarhorn soldiers in charge of the interrogation would have done more than just beat him up on the spot. Suddenly, before the two Larshorn soldiers could make a decision, a muffled sound came from the corridor outside, as well as a suppressed scream. Puff! As well as the sound of heavy footsteps. It was as if there was a huge and heavy creature walking in the corridor outside. Confused, the two Larshorn soldiers didn't rush to open the door to check. Instead, they leaned against the door, one on the left and one on the right, and pulled out their pistols, ready to ambush any enemy that might appear. However, just like the sudden scream and muffled sound just now, the heavy footsteps wandering in the corridor outside suddenly stopped. Then, just as the silence descended and the two Larshorn soldiers relaxed slightly, a terrifying force suddenly erupted from the corridor outside, forcefully knocking down the door and the wall. The soldiers standing on the left and right sides of the door were sent flying by the terrifying impact. They flew out from the left and right sides of the girl with billowing smoke and dust slamming into both sides of the window. In an instant, cracks visible to the naked eye spread to the entire wall with the two Lars Horn soldiers as the center. On the other hand, a ferocious lion slowly walked out of the smoke and dust on the other side of the door that had been knocked down and came in front of the girl. Chapter 704. When the messy and dense footsteps came from the other side of the passage, a group of Lars Horn soldiers with live ammunition rushed out of the passage. However, before these Gjallarhorn soldiers could raise the assault rifles in their hands, they were shocked by the crisscrossing claw marks on the wall and the soldiers who had fallen into a pool of blood. There was not a single piece of their bodies that was intact. What exactly is going on? Second Lieutenant Lars Horn, who was leading the group, was stunned and couldn't understand everything in front of him. The crisscrossing claw marks on the wall were very different from the beasts known to humans. Second Lieutenant, there's still one alive here. It's our informant. The call from the other side of the room made the second lieutenant quickly step into the room, stepping on the pool of blood that gradually spread to the entire corridor. It was a man in a suit with a dull expression. From his expression, it seemed that he was greatly frightened and lost his soul. This was not strange at all. As long as it was an ordinary person who lived in peaceful times, as long as they saw the extremely shocking and terrifying scene in the corridor outside, they would definitely lose their soul like the man in front of them. Of course, if they brought this man back and took care of him, they would definitely be able to smoothly get the information they wanted. However, if they went back and forth like this, they would definitely lose the best opportunity to chase the enemy. Therefore, Second Lieutenant Lars Horn stepped on the bloody footprints and came in front of the man, reached out and grabbed his collar, then slap, slap. After 2 consecutive slaps, under the severe pain caused by the slaps, the man's dull eyes seemed to have a trace of light. But it's not enough. Therefore, Second Lieutenant Lars Horn raised his hand again. Slap, slap, 2 more slaps. This time it was effective. However, the effect seemed to be a little beyond Second Lieutenant Lars Horn's expectations. Bye. See Kate. The dull man moved his mouth and said a name. And this name was not unfamiliar to Second Lieutenant Lars Horn. This was because he had come for this name, as well as the new Iron Splendor Regiment that was hidden behind this name. But before Lars Horn could ask, a strong force broke away from the man's collar. No, don't come any closer. No. His sluggish expression was quickly replaced by extreme fear. That pair of eyes that had just glowed with a trace of rationality was now filled with boundless fear. The man retreated in panic. Even if the soldiers of Gjallarhorn were standing in front of him, they were armed with live ammunition. What happened? Second Lieutenant Lars Horn subconsciously took a step forward, but he unexpectedly pushed the man into an even more terrifying abyss. Ah! The man screamed and retreated until he reached the window. In that boundless fear, the man's hands touched the edge of the window. At this moment, the cold wind that blew in from outside the window stopped the man's emotions that were about to fall into the abyss of collapse. Then, the man's pair of eyes that were occupied by panic seemed to have recovered a trace of rationality. It's you guys. The man seemed to have recognized the soldiers Lars Horn in front of him. A trace of a creepy smile quietly climbed up the man's mouth, making the soldiers standing behind Second Lieutenant Lars Horn subconsciously take a step back. It's you guys, the man said faintly. His voice was hollow, but it was filled with some kind of terrifying emotion. It's you guys, Lars Horn's lords. Hey, you better calm down. What exactly happened here? Second Lieutenant Lars Horn seemed to feel that the man had recovered to the level of rationality that he could talk to, and subconsciously put on the attitude that he used to treat informants. No, to treat people that were defined as sinners by Lars Horn in the past. What happened? The man chuckled. In the laughter, there was fear and madness that was about to collapse. What happened? Didn't Lars Horn's lords see it clearly? The lion tore everyone apart. In the deep laughter, there was a narration that was like a whisper from hell. Moreover, before the narration that was like a demon's whisper was finished, the man suddenly let out a terrifying scream. Ah! Everyone is dead. They were all torn apart by the lion. In the terrifying scream, the man was as agile as a monkey. Taking advantage of the moment when Lars Horn's soldiers were stunned, he suddenly turned around and climbed up the window. Then, in the whistling wind and the ear-piercing scream, he crashed to the ground and exploded a dazzling and bewitching flower of blood on the white and flat ground. The sudden change caught Lars Horn's soldiers off guard, but they also caught the most crucial evidence. Lion. The man's panic scream was not worthless. However, would there really be a lion-like beast in this colonial satellite? Moreover, it was a lion that could scare humans. DD. Coincidentally, when this second Lieutenant Lars Horn was about to order to clean up this terrible scene, an emergency call for support came. Third Squad, requesting support. A suspected target was found, and there is an unknown beast beside the suspected target. Lion. Looking at this message, Second Lieutenant Lars Horn was shocked. He seemed to have caught the key point. Gunshots swept the entire street. The whistling rain of bullets scared the ordinary people on the entire street into retreating into their shops. They didn't dare to raise their heads to observe the battle on the street. There are even some timid people who trembled as they followed behind the shop owner and crawled into the isolation chamber under the shop. Although, that was just a comfort facility. They are really chasing us. Listening to the continuous gunshots from behind, Biscat, who was holding the steering wheel, gritted his teeth and tried his best to get rid of the pursuers behind him. Be careful. In front. The moment the vague words came from Biscat's side, a white shadow rushed out from the side of Biscat's car without any warning. Like a meteor, it rushed into Lars Horn's armored car that came from the right intersection. Roar! The moment the thunderous roar rang out, the armored vehicle that almost succeeded in intercepting Biscat and Atlas exploded with a loud bang. In the billowing flames, a white shadow stepped out of the flames and once again landed beside Biscat's car. State Zero, Your Excellency, you really made a big commotion. Looking at White Lion's fiery claws, Biscat opened his mouth and could only say this in the end. No matter what, with the flesh and blood that Biscat knew, the pure White Lion that smashed an armored car in one move was already beyond the level of human cognition in today's world. Who would have thought that there was a beast that could tear an armored car apart with its flesh and blood? Roar! A low growl came from State Zero's throat, and that pair of extremely human-like eyes cast a glance at Biscat. Somehow, Biscat knew what State Zero wanted him to do with one glance. Good. Sit tight. Atra, now, we will rush to the port immediately. Are we going back? Atlas, whose face was swollen red, squeaked a few times. In the end, under Biscat's rapid turn, he gave up the idea of continuing to ask. In fact, State Zero knew what Atlas wanted to ask. However, these things did not require Atlas's attention, because when State Zero started to rescue Atlas and Biscat, Ray Minkai had already started to move. The low engine sound came from afar. In the midst of the engine's sound that echoed on the streets, Lars Horn soldiers who set up checkpoints near the spaceport saw a car with a low roar coming towards them quickly. There was no hesitation. The moment the well-trained Lars Horn soldiers saw the uninvited guest, they immediately raised the assault rifle in their hands and turned on the high brightness. The extremely dazzling searchlight was aimed at the uninvited guest. Unknown car. Please stop immediately. Otherwise, we will treat you as a thug with the intention of attacking, and will take effective defensive measures to prevent violent situations from happening. Under the dazzling searchlight, there was a loudspeaker that was constantly broadcasting warnings. However, even if the loudspeaker was loud enough to set off waves of deafening sound waves on the streets, it could not suppress the sound waves set off by the car that was speeding towards the checkpoint. Close. The moment the roaring engine sounded like an explosion in the ears of the soldiers of Gallahorn. The soldiers of Gallahorn, who were on high alert with their guns raised, had already seen the face that was driving the car towards them from the windshield of the car. It's a man! The moment this thought appeared, the frontline commander of Lars Horn, who was in charge of this checkpoint, suddenly ordered, "Fire! Attack!" Tut, 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 tut. In an instant, the sound of gunfire was heard. Whistling bullets, flames of different lengths, and the faintly discernible trajectory became the main theme of this moment. However, the Lars Horn checkpoint that set off a hail of bullets in an instant did not achieve the expected effect. In the imagination of these Lars Horn soldiers, the car that came out of nowhere did not succeed in breaking through the checkpoint. Instead, it would be hit by their bullet screen, then flip high, and finally explode under the bullet screen. It would end up as a tragic clown who tried to challenge Lars Horn's hundreds of years of fame. But what was the reality? Not only did the car that came out of nowhere not explode under the bullet screen, but a white shadow appeared in front of the car to block it. As the faint wall of light appeared, all the attacks set off by this checkpoint and all the bullet screen disappeared. All that was left were the bullets that seemed to have been frozen in time, quietly hovering in the air. What's going on? The same question once again appeared in the hearts of the soldiers who belonged to Lars Horn. However, this time, these soldiers who belonged to Lars Horn did not have the luck to get the answer. Buzz! With a slight roar, a sharp, dazzling, and extremely terrifying shock wave suddenly swept through the entire street. Not only did it set off a terrifying hurricane that was strong enough to tear apart the shops on both sides of the street, it even tore the checkpoint in the middle of the street into pieces as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Along with the scarlet red that swept over from all directions, it quickly gathered together and dyed the street a shocking and extremely horrifying bright red. Roar! After the hurricane, a proud roar sounded. The car did not slow down at all. Stepping on the retreating tail of the hurricane, it rushed through the broken checkpoint and sped towards the port in the distance. White Lion, who had made such a terrifying attack, did not care about this. Instead, it turned its head to look at the street next to it and looked at the car that had just turned into this street. Not good. Atra, don't look around. As soon as Biscat saw the terrifying red on the walls on both sides of the street, he immediately understood something. Under his hurried reminder, although Atlas did not see the situation on both sides of the street, he had already thought of a clue. After all, when White Lion rescued the two of them, the terrifying scene in the aisle was not a lie. In order to walk through the aisle, Atlas could be said to have exhausted all his strength since he was born. Right now, being able to persist without fainting was already the limit of what Atlas could do. After a long time, Biscat's voice was heard. "Atlas, we're here. Your Excellency, Miss Lakis, and Gudelia are waiting for us over there." Outside. 3. Galio and Lucio received an unbelievable piece of news. "Lion, how did an animal from Earth appear in 3? Galio looked at the information in his hand and was very surprised. As the investigation continued, even more surprising things appeared in front of Galio's eyes. How is this possible? The well-trained Lars Horn soldiers were killed by a beast that somehow came from Earth to 3. How is this possible? Galio was so angry that he laughed and sneered. "Lion, what kind of beast is it?" Galio knew. But no matter how ferocious the beast was, it could not defeat the well-trained and fully armed Lars Horn soldiers. Not to mention other things, just the tacit cooperation of the formation shooting was enough to kill all the beasts on Earth. But even so, the Lars Horn soldiers were all defeated. There was an enemy that ran into space. "I'm not waiting anymore." The more Galio looked, the more he felt like he was going to explode. He threw the tablet in his hand aside and turned to Gaudas Samanli. "Now I must attack immediately. Whether it's a lion or a cat, I will take care of it. This is Lars Horn's humiliation." Chapter 705. The car whizzed past and rushed into the heavily guarded port. Lars Horn's troops, who were in charge of guarding the port, had already received the news when they were charging at the checkpoint just now. However, when facing the pure white lion that looked several times bigger than the lion Lars Horn soldiers from Earth, these Lars Horn soldiers were a little dumbfounded. No matter who it was, when they saw that their assault rifles could not hit the strange pure white lion, they would feel disbelief and disbelief. Don't stop. Mobile engineers, forward. Quick. Commander Gallahorn, who was stationed at the port, immediately ordered the NK-17 mobile engineer unit that had been prepared for a long time to be activated. Even though, if it were an ordinary beast, it would have already fallen into a pool of blood under the assault rifles of Lars Horn soldiers. It would no longer have its ferocious and tyrannical appearance. However, the pure white lion that was protecting the two cars did not have the slightest possibility of being shot by Lars Horn soldiers. Therefore, if the commander judged that the caliber was not enough, then he would use a bigger one, until the pure white lion was killed. At the same time, the impact from the large caliber machine guns, or even the cannon's shots, might also affect the two cars. Compared to the strange pure white lion, the two cars were much more ordinary. They were so ordinary that only a small team of Lars Horn soldiers was needed to deal with them. Therefore, the large caliber machine guns, owned by the NK-17 Gallahorn mobile engineers, were launched with a loud bang. At the same time, the mobile engineers, who were positioned further back but were equipped with more lethal missile compartments, followed one after another. They launched missiles in coordination with the barrage launched by the mobile engineers in front of them, completely sealing off the area with the pure white lion as the center. Get down! As soon as Ray Minkai saw the missiles rising from behind the mobile engineers, he immediately shouted to remind the three women sitting next to him and in the back seat. Roar! It was fast at the same time. The moment Lakis, Gudelia, and Fumiton got down, the missiles whistled through the air and landed on their heads. Boom! 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 At this moment, the tearing sound of the machine guns was completely defeated by the rumbling of the missiles. Looking at the fireballs rising into the air and the vibrations coming from the ground, Lars Horn soldiers guarding the port subconsciously released the triggers in their hands. They silently watched the terrifying storm set off by the missiles that swallowed the pure white lion and the two cars. It was a terrifying weapon personally created by humans. In the past, as long as the mobile engineers under Gallahorn were dispatched, most of the enemies would not be able to last long under such an attack and would vanish in a puff of smoke. The rumbling sound of the missiles were launched gradually stopped. It was time for the continuous explosions to die down. The commander of Gallahorn slowly lowered his right hand. The soldiers of Gallahorn, who were guarding various advantageous offensive positions, raised their muzzles again and aimed at the still tumbling flame storm. Did it succeed? Perhaps this was what everyone was thinking right now. Boom! All of a sudden, a metallic sound rang out, as if some kind of object was stirring. At first, the rolling storm of flames seemed to be repelled from the inside by some kind of fluctuation and spread outwards. At first glance, it actually looked like the agitation of a beating heart with a strong driving force. Boom, boom! Another agitation sound. Under this agitation sound, all Lars Horn's soldiers tensed up. They didn't know what was going on. However, when the agitation sound came, it made everyone present subconsciously feel a trace of retreat. No, don't panic. Everyone gather. Fire. Commander Lars Horn, who felt more panic from the bottom of his heart than the others, quickly raised his right hand again and shouted the order to fire. Boom, boom, boom. The heavy agitation sounded again, and at the same time, it was also an opportunity for everyone to pull the trigger again. Boom. Boom, boom. The assault rifles in the hands of the soldiers. The large caliber machine guns of the NK-17 mobile engineers, as well as the missile cabins that were located at the back and still had ammunition left, took turns to fight again. The whistling bullets, the whistling missiles, once again notified the sky above the port. In the hearts of the soldiers who were Lars Horn, in the hearts of the commanders who were Lars Horn, they all decided at the same time. Yes, What a magnificent sight it was. Under such a gorgeous and spectacular scene, no one would be able to escape the fierce firepower. However, amidst the rain of bullets, the unsettling agitation rang out once again. Boom, boom, boom. The moment this agitation swept through the entire scene, it suppressed the sound of gunshots and explosions, completely seizing the initiative from the hands of Lars Horn's troops. Boom, boom. Before the sound fell, another sound followed closely behind. In the rolling storm of flames, a black shadow that was getting stronger and stronger became clearer with the sound of the agitation. Buzz. Two missiles that soared into the air from behind Lars Horn's troops whistled over. Just as they were about to penetrate the storm of flames and hit the growing black shadow, a beam of light suddenly tore through the storm of flames and streaked across the air, blowing up the two incoming missiles on the spot. Boom! Boom! The sound of the two missiles that were blown up in the air was like a death knell, calming the minds of all the Lars Horn soldiers present. Boom, boom. The flames surged and soared into the sky. The blazing heat wave was like a monstrous wave that rolled in all directions. Especially the defensive line established by Lars Horn, it was the focus of this soaring heat wave. Hot, hot. The incomparably blazing heat wave only needed a second to burn all the defensive lines established by Lars Horn. In the rising flames, the soldiers wearing Lars Horn's uniforms screamed and retreated, constantly slapping their uniforms on the flames. But it was too late. The extremely impactful and destructive heat wave was like an all-pervasive demon. No matter what the Lars Horn soldiers did, they were unable to extinguish the flames on their bodies. No, no, save me, no. At this time, the bright and straight uniforms became the coffin that buried the soldiers of Gjallarhorn. The jumping flames were more like the grim reaper waving his scythe, chasing after Lars Horn's soldiers, whose will was gradually collapsing and who only had the consciousness to run for their lives left. Save me. Hurry and save me. The soldiers who were constantly fleeing made Commander Lars Horn, who was standing at the back, unable to do anything, but he still had one last method. He raised his hand and pulled out his gun. Bang! The sharp gunshot woke up the soldiers around Commander Lars Horn. Calm down. It's just fire. However, before Commander Lars Horn, who was trying to stabilize the morale of the soldiers, could finish his words, he was slammed to the ground by a black shadow that fell from the sky. Chila. The moment the blazing temperature touched the ground, the terrifying sound that rang out became the nightmare of the Lars Horn soldiers who participated in this interception operation. The heat wave that came head-on made all the Lars Horn soldiers who witnessed it collapse on the spot. Screams, and the soldiers who were rolling and crawling, ignoring how much damage the scorching ground would bring to them, just to quickly escape from the port, were the symbols of the failure of this interception mission. Outside the port, several Lars Horn cruisers were on high alert, waiting for the signal of the landing force guarding the port. But the result was the news that made them feel depressed. We failed. Galio, who boarded Gau to Samanli, sneered. That's natural. From the beginning, I didn't have any hope for the landing force to intercept Gudelia. Lou Lucio's voice came from the communication channel, which made Galio a little surprised. Oh, so, Mr. K, you knew from the beginning that the group of space rats would successfully escape from Dot 3? Mr. Galio, the price of underestimating the enemy is very high. They're not space rats. Lou Lucio reminded him, but Galio didn't know that Lou Lucio had another sentence in his heart that he didn't say out loud. Under the leadership of that night, the three cruisers surrounding Dot 3 port now, two of his teams are probably not enough to fight against that night. Of course, no matter what, Lou Lucio didn't mean to say this sentence. Is that so? Space rats, no matter what, are still space rats. Galio's performance was still within Lou Lucio's expectations. Therefore, it didn't matter if he said that sentence or not. Bridge, this is Galio Barjuan. Now I want to attack with the Samanli. Please open the hatch. Galio, who decided not to wait any longer, directly contacted the bridge. His attitude was very firm. Faced with the failure of the landing force, the captain of the cruiser finally bowed his head. Understood. Open the hatch for Special Agent Major Galio immediately. But your wingman? I'll attack too. Please. Lucio, who boarded Schwaber, took the initiative to ask for the attack. Understood. I'll leave the timing to you two. Obviously, although the captain agreed to Galio's request to attack, he still tried to shirk his responsibility to the greatest extent. In response, Galio snorted coldly. In the end, they're still so timid. Those guys from the Control Bureau are really rotten. The next moment, Gao, Samanli, and Schwaber, who attacked one after another, saw the port being engulfed by flames. That is, under Gao Da's super high magnification electronic eyes, Galio saw the moment the airships that fled in panic were engulfed by the sea of flames. From the porthole filled with flames, Galio saw the soldiers wearing Lars Horn's uniform with fear on their faces. What's going on? The port exploded? Looks like it. The enemy's ability seems to be beyond our imagination. Compared to Galio, who was in disbelief, Lucio was well aware of the situation. The only culprit who could create such a huge commotion was probably the lion that had always been by Lei Mingkai's side. Galio looked at the airships that were struggling to escape in the sea of flames and finally clenched his teeth. Mr. K, let's save them first. Understood. This decision was not only Galio's decision, but it was also the decision of the 3 cruiser captains behind him. The situation at the port was unknown. Their own people were struggling to escape and needed to be rescued immediately. After a few rounds of discussion, the compromise of carrying out the rescue first and then investigating later was decided. Behind the sea of flames, an airship which had stealthily left Dot 3 successfully flew into the shadow of Dot 3. With the help of the shadow, it flew towards Dot 2. Through the small porthole, Biscat couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. After relaxing, the fatigue that spread from the depths of his body made the fat man limp. If it weren't for the fact that they were in a state of microgravity, Biscat would probably be lying on the ground and unable to get up. We're saved, Biscat exclaimed. No, we can't relax yet. Lei Mingkai, who was piloting the airship, slowly spoke. Now, Lars Horn already has his eyes on ancient Delia. Even if we successfully return to the fishing fire, what we have to face next is the orbital fleet that will line up to intercept us in orbit. Thanks to Lei Mingkai's planning and the White Lion Stancero, the matter of Gedelia, Biscat, and the others in Dot 3 came to an end very quickly. However, the following operation was not any less difficult. Will Lars Horn stop me from landing on Earth? Gedelia, who was applying medicine on Atlas's swollen face, said with a gloomy expression. I'm afraid so. And Lakis nodded, but she didn't finish her sentence. However, her gaze made Gedelia subconsciously follow her gaze. In the corner of the airship, the maid who had been faithfully following Gedelia did not appear next to her. Instead, she sat alone in the corner of the airship, exuding an aura of self-isolation. This change made Biscat and Atlas, who were unaware of it, feel a little strange, but they couldn't say anything. That's right. The two of them didn't know that when they escaped from the hotel, Lakis' words undoubtedly exposed Fumiton's mask and left a wound in their hearts that might be difficult to heal. Facing Gedelia's doubts, Fumiton's silence was the biggest admission. Let's return to fishing fire first. In the end, it was Lei Mingkai who made the decision. After all, what followed next was the critical moment of breaking into Earth under the interception of the Earth's outer orbit command fleet. Chapter 706. The situation of Dot 3 continued to deteriorate, but the airship driven by Lei Mingkai and the others also converged with Firefish. Your Excellency, it's great that you're okay. After understanding Lei Mingkai's hint, Olga and the others, who returned to Firefish first and were not affected by the chaos, looked at the people who returned to the bridge in surprise. It was scary but not dangerous. But I didn't expect you to return a firefish before us. Ray Minkai nodded, looked around at the people around him, and said with some surprise. As expected, Olga understood the hints that Lei Minkai had given him. No, that's all thanks to your guidance. Olga remembered the scene where Lars Horn soldiers suddenly appeared in front of her and rushed into the warehouse. Olga couldn't help but secretly rejoice. If she didn't understand Ray Minkai's hint in time, they would be trapped in the warehouse and unable to return to Firefish. Is that so? That's because you were able to discover the atmosphere on the colonial satellite in time. Don't take my reminder too seriously. Ray Minkai waved his hand and then walked to the communication device. Now, Fumiton, whose identity was exposed by Ray Minkai and Lakis, was no longer suitable to carry out Firefish's communication. Therefore, the female accountant, Maribede, who was assigned by Divac, temporarily replaced him. Needless to say, when Ray Minkai saw this particularly low-key female accountant appear in front of him, his eyes became a little excited. Because, no matter if it was Melibede or Lux who was standing beside him, their voice actor was the same person. Of course, this so-called excitement came from some distant memories in Ray Minkai's mind. In front of him, Maribede and Lakis were both humans with different memories, spirits, and personalities. Maribede, thank you. Can you connect to .3's live broadcast? Now, I believe Lars Horn won't let go of this great opportunity. Ray Minkai's words had a hidden meaning, and most people were unable to react for a moment. Is it to announce to the world that what they are about to do is legal? Is it to make the majority of the world shut up? Lakis followed closely behind, echoing Lei Minkai's words. Yes, Olga, when you left early, did you see anything? Did you discover anything? Under Ray Minkai's guidance, Olga recalled the Jia Lars Horn armored vehicles that appeared at the right time, as well as the Jia Lars Horn fleet that appeared at the right time. Yes, at first, I didn't notice it. Now that I think about it, the incident that happened on the colonial satellite doesn't seem to be as simple as it seems. It's as if there's a pair of hands behind the scenes manipulating everything. Olga's mind became more and more active. Step by step, he gathered everything he saw and encountered in .2 and gradually condensed the key to the truth, manipulating from behind the scenes. Could it be that Lars Horn planned this riot from the beginning? Eugene exclaimed. Ray Minkai looked at the equally surprised crowd, then looked at Fumiton, who stood alone and seemed a little out of place with the crowd, and shook his head slightly. Do you think it's impossible? In fact, although this riot was caused by the suffering of the people on the colonial satellite, don't you think the speed of development is too shocking? Olga, when you handed over the goods, did you notice the situation in the warehouse? Your Excellency, what are you talking about? Suddenly, Olga remembered that when they handed over the goods, the neatly arranged containers in the warehouse seemed to have the same conspicuous logo. And this logo was the logo of the party that the Iron Flower Regiment received from Divac. If the goods that the Taiwan Regiment was transporting this time were weapons, then those containers with the same logo were probably the same. Your Excellency, do you think this is a rebellion that has been planned for a long time? Ray Minkai denied Olga's speculation. No, it's not that. It's the truth. After that, Ray Minkai looked at Maribede. At this moment, Maribede's face seemed a little pale. From the looks of it, she had successfully analyzed the live broadcast from .3. I've finished analyzing .3's news broadcast signal. It's now on the main screen. I just hope you're prepared. Olga, Eugene, Gudelia, and the others' eyes changed, and they seemed to have sensed something bad. Put it up. No matter what, we have to know about .3's situation. Otherwise, this ship won't be able to leave this colonial satellite group. Lakis nodded at Maribede and said. Maribede nodded silently and pressed the button to switch the broadcast to the main screen. Cha! The instant the sound of the main screen lighting up was heard, there was a burst of deafening cheers. For the future of our children, for the family. On the screen, there were a lot of people. At first glance, there were at least 1,000 people appearing on the street in the distance. But before the team was halfway there, Lars Horn soldiers guarding the street opened fire without warning. In an instant, the deafening roar was interrupted by gunshots. On the entire street, other than the sound of gunshots, there were only the screams of the people who were hit by bullets and the people who fell in pools of blood. Hey, this can't be real, right? Eugene looked at the horrifying scene on the screen in shock, and his whole body was trembling. Although Eugene had risked his life several times on the battlefield, as a bystander, when he saw Lars Horn's suppression of the unarmed people, he couldn't help but shiver. This is real. Eugene, Ray Minkai said softly. This was indeed real. It was so real that Olga couldn't accept it. Because, in the scene that flashed by just now, Olga saw a face that was dyed red with blood and had lost all signs of life. There was only anger and fear left. He was the leader of the group of people who had met Olga in the warehouse. In just a few hours, the uncle who just treated everyone in the Iron Flower Regiment, including himself, as heroes, was shot dead by Lars Horn's soldiers and fell in a pool of blood. The scene in front of him changed, but the face dyed red with blood was deeply imprinted in Olga's mind. Anger? Yes. Olga was very angry now, but he couldn't give the order to attack in a fit of anger and let the Iron Flower Regiment get involved in this mess. This is Lars Horn's righteousness. Gedelia, who was silent for a long time, spoke. Maybe, when Lars Horn was first established, it was to protect the peace of the human world. A hint of mockery appeared on Raymond Kai's face. During the sacrificial war and the period after the war, Lars Horn might have been able to achieve its initial ideals. But after the tragic sacrificial war, the heroes of the war that almost wiped out the human race passed away, and this independent organization that controlled the top military force of the human race gradually became rotten. Now, the series of arrangements made by Lars Horn in the Dort Colonial Satellite Group may have been based on some kind of righteousness, but the fundamental purpose had long been corrupted by personal interests. Is that so? In order to achieve the so-called righteousness, Lars Horn can use any means to induce others, to induce the oppressed people on the Dort Colonial Satellite to revolt, and then use bloody and cruel means to kill the people? Gedelia's voice gradually became sharper and more forceful. Her gaze became incomparably sharp. But even so, Ray Minkai was still able to look her in the eyes. This question really stumps me. Gedelia, this is an operation to send some people, some talents favored by Lars Horn, to a high position, and even provide credit to many people behind the scenes. In this turmoil, the only people who paid the price but didn't receive compensation are the people who have been oppressed for a long time. Your Excellency, so you're saying that even if the African Union behind the Dort Colonial Satellite Cluster won't compensate them or even improve their treatment? Maybe, or maybe not. To break this incident down, whether it's Lars Horn or the African Union, the price they paid is not high. After the incident is over, the benefits they can receive will far outweigh the price. Raymond Kai's words made Gedelia silent. She understood. As the party that suppressed the turmoil, not only did Lars Horn once again fulfill the obligation to maintain the peace of human society, but he could also use this incident to declare his military force to various economic circles, thereby consolidating his ruling power. The African Union, on the other hand, was happy to watch the thorns in the labor force being wiped out by Gallahorn and replaced with more obedient people. Things seemed to be developing according to Ray Minkai's speculation. No, Gedelia, this incident is far from the critical point. Lakis, who knew the cruelty of the struggle, spoke. How was that possible? They were killed by Lars Horn's soldiers. Gedelia shook her head and raised her hand to point at the dazzling scene on the main screen. No, this is just a small fight. If Lars Horn's plan is that simple, why would the Iron Flower Regiment, and you, Gedelia Lana Bernstein, appear in the Dort Colonial Satellite Group at such a coincidental and subtle time? Lakis used facts to expose Lars Horn's hidden method step by step in front of Gedelia and the people led by Olga. The Colonial Satellite Group is just a small riot. There's no need to mobilize the Aryan Head fleet under Gjallarhorn to surround the Dort colonial satellite cluster in such a grand manner. Lakis paused, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. I'm afraid that the people who are unwilling to be oppressed will be blinded by hatred and do something extremely unwise when their companions are killed by Lars Horn soldiers. How is that possible? Gudelia was shocked. Ah, yes, I understand. Next, those uncles will not only raise their assault rifles to resist. Olga clenched her teeth with an unwilling expression. MS. The daily maintenance of the colonial satellite must rely on heavy machinery to operate, especially when replacing the outer wall of the colonial satellite and preventing debris from flying from deep space and asteroids. It is especially important. Therefore, I believe that the industrial Mississippi parked in the industrial warehouse and the armed airships parked in the port have already been targeted by them. This was a fact, but the people understood another meaning from Ray Minkai's words. Wait! Eugene raised his hands and gestured back and forth a few times before he said with uncertainty, Your Excellency, you mean those industrial Mississippi and airships may have been tampered with by Lars Horn? Lay Minkai snorted and nodded, agreeing with Eugene's conjecture. Yes, presumably, the people who had been incited already rushed into the unguarded warehouse and drove those MS and airships out. The next moment, the development of the situation was just as Ray Minkai predicted. New light spots constantly appeared in the direction of Dot 1, Dot 2, Dot 4, and Dot 5. The light spots that constantly lit up and quickly flew out of the colonial satellite port. Without looking, one already knew that they were the people who took the most intense, the most extreme, and the most foolish actions under hatred and oppression. They're out. The people were silent. The light spots that appeared from the colonial satellite seemed to be large in number, and the momentum was quite grand, but the people of the Iron Flower Regiment who were watching all of this already saw the result. Because the moment the angry people drove out the MS and armed airships stored in the warehouse and port, they had already fallen into Lars Horn's trap. Those MS, those armed airships, must have been tampered with and could not be used at all. Their only purpose was to be driven out by these angry people as moving targets for Lars Horn. What should we do? Should we attack to support those uncles? Everyone, including Olga, subconsciously looked at Ray Minkai. Not long ago, the people of the Iron Flower Regiment, who just became the masters of the CGS, had a natural sense of intimacy and sympathy for the workers on the Dot 5 colonial satellite. But Ray Minkai didn't look at them. Instead, he looked at Gudelia. What should we do? Gudelia Lana Bernstein, the revolutionary girl regarded as the hope of the Martians. Chapter 707. The news of the death of Nabonamingo, the leader of the resistance against the company, the African Union, and even Lars Horn's exploitation, was broadcasted live on Dot 3's news. The entire Dot Colonial Satellite Group was in an uproar. Some people gloated. Some people cried bitterly. Some people, full of anger, led like-minded partners into the company's warehouse and took out the MS stored in the warehouse. They shouted that they wanted to avenge Nabonamingo, that they wanted to fight for the future for their children and grandchildren, and that they wanted to show the big shots who stood at the top all day, exploited them, and treated them as worthless weeds. They rushed out of the colonial satellite with the slogan. However, the workers did not know that someone had been waiting for a long time outside the Dot Colonial Satellite Group. In fact, from a moment Nabonamingo began to move and became the leader of the struggle for the Dot Colonial Satellite Group, Lars Horn surveillance and even promotion had never been absent. Not for anything else. It was for this moment. Using all kinds of methods to attract most of the rebels who hated the African Union and even hated Lars Horn himself, and then catch them all in one fell swoop. So, now it was time. The flagship of the Aryan Head fleet. When the workers who stole the MS and armed spaceships deliberately left by Lars Horn all over the Dot Colonial Satellite Group appeared, the radar of the entire fleet immediately locked onto them. At the same time, a series of information was gathered in the flagship of the Aryan Head fleet. Report. The rioters have successfully stolen all kinds of weapons on the colonial satellites we left behind. Now, they're attacking the guards set up by the dot company on the various colonial satellites in a dense formation. Please give instructions. The long-time plan finally came to fruition. The commander of the Aryan Head fleet nodded slightly, then waved his right hand and ordered loudly. All units of the Aryan Head fleet, listen up. Now, the culprits who dragged the dot colonial satellite group into the abyss of chaos can no longer hold back their arrogance. They're trying to challenge us, Lars Horn, who controls the top force of human society. So, there's only one thing you need to do. That is to make these arrogant people who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth regret living in this world. Ms. Troop, attack! Aryan Head's fleet commander gave the order, and Gretz's fleet, which had been on standby, immediately rushed into the warning circle of the Dort colonial satellite cluster. At this moment, not only was the warning system of the Dort colonial satellite cluster alerted, but even Spinamandy, who was piloting the looted airship, and the workers on the armed airship had noticed the incoming MS army. The meaning of the dense light spots extinguished most of the anger of the workers on the spot. That's Lars Horn's Aryan Head fleet. How could this be? How could Gretz and Lars Horn be here? The densely packed dots of light were undoubtedly Lars Horn's main MS Greys. Its firepower, armor, and even mobility were beyond Spinamandy standards. In fact, in a sense, the furious laborers were far inferior to the well-trained and calm MS pilots under Lars Horn. Of course, those laborers were not incompetent people. Otherwise, even with Gallahorn adding fuel to the fire behind the scenes, it would have been difficult for them to succeed. Calm down. We still have weapons in our hands. Aim. Attack. Let Lars Horn and those bastards have a taste of our power. The same thought, the same action, the same thought kept appearing in the hands of the laborers. But when the first fireball lit up in the sector of Dort 3, Gudelia, who was standing in the bridge of the fisherman's fire, couldn't help but clench her fists. Her snow-white skin also became incomparably red. Gudelia, what is your dream? Or what has supported you until now? Lakis retracted her gaze from Gudelia's hands that were gradually tightening but did not know the pain. She stared into Gudelia's eyes and asked. Gudelia didn't say anything. She only bit her lips and subconsciously looked to the side. But now, the person standing next to Gudelia was no longer there, and the owner of that figure was now standing in an even further place, in an almost undetectable corner, silently watching all of this. She didn't say anything to support Gudelia, nor did she say anything to repent for what she had done and what she had almost done. Gudelia, the person I want to ask is not someone else. It's you, Gudelia Lana Bernstein. Lakis had noticed Gudelia's little action long ago. Ever since she met Gudelia, she had been inseparable from her maid Fumitin. She had also relied on Fumitin. If this maid Fumitin treated Gudelia wholeheartedly and treated her as her master, this wasn't a bad thing. But the bad thing was that Fumitin had been sent by the mastermind behind the scenes who had been manipulating Gudelia Lana Bernstein's life from the very beginning. Thus, Gudelia, who relied heavily on Fumitin, was nothing more than a puppet before she had a clear idea of what she wanted. Fumitin's betrayal dealt a heavy blow to Gudelia. Perhaps she didn't know that after losing Fumitin's support, she was like a lost girl who had lost her guidance, lost and helpless. What's wrong? Is this the revolutionary girl that the Martians saw as their hope? Lakis pressed forward step by step. Lakis became more and more aggressive, but strangely, no one in the bridge spoke up to stop Lakis. This was because Ray Minkai had already left the bridge earlier to prepare for the attack. In order to support Ray Minkai, and to ensure that fish fire could be preserved in the upcoming battle, Olga, Eugene, and the others had no choice but to use all their strength to prepare everything they could. For this reason, Olga and the others didn't have the time to pay attention to Lakis pressing on Gudelia. The Martians, Lakis pressed on step by step, and Gudelia subconsciously took a step back. But the moment her foot landed, Giudelia thought of the orphans on Mars and the tragedies she had witnessed. No, I've always acted for the sake of the Martians who have suffered and been oppressed. This wasn't an idea, or even a goal that was forcefully instilled in me by anyone. Giudelia clenched her teeth. The scene of her being lost in the slums when she was young appeared in her mind. She had personally witnessed children who were younger than her, but starved to death because they didn't receive any food. Even the candy that she had personally given out had almost become the cause of evil for the children who had accepted the kindness from her. Giudelia Alana Bernstein, to be beaten to death on the spot by the other children hidden in the shadows. If it wasn't for Fiumitin, in an instant, the memories of the slums in Giudelia's mind mysteriously pointed to a person who had always been by her side and supported her like family. Midnight Amos. Fiumitin, you were the one who guided me to the slums when I was young, right? The maid standing in the corner raised her head slightly and nodded expressionlessly. Yes, that was based on Nobilis Gordon's instructions. Is that so? The maid's frank admission made Giudelia reveal a bitter smile mixed with helplessness. However, the moment she turned her head and looked at Lakis, the bitter smile had already disappeared quietly. It was replaced by a serious and strong face, as well as a pair of eyes shining with determination. Lakis Klein, maybe I understand now. In this world, not only are the people on Mars suffering, but here, there are also people who are oppressed and exploited like the people on Mars. Giudelia's voice became sharp and high-spirited. If I turn a blind eye to all of this and don't take any action that I can, maybe I won't have any qualifications and face to go back and see the Martians who have placed their hopes on me. Looking at Giudelia's eyes, full of determination, Lakis suddenly smiled. Is that so? Then, please don't forget what you just said. Then, Lakis took a step back and stood next to the automatic door. Giudelia, having a firm ideal is a good thing, but if you don't have enough strength, the ideal you insist on is just empty talk. Fortunately, you have enough power in your hands to realize your ideals. Cha, as soon as Lakis finished speaking, a camera pressed under the claws of a pure white lion appeared in front of Giudelia. Boom! Boom! The attack of the Grez forces belonging to the Aryan Head fleet was fierce and deadly. The well-trained Grez pilots, whether it was the attack formation or the attack methods, were far beyond the imagination of the workers. Even the workers who boasted about how skilled they were in engineering work, such as building the colonial satellite and carrying out small planetary explosions, could not last more than a few rounds in front of these Grez pilots. No, go to hell. Go to hell. The one-sided massacre finally calmed down the angry workers. But what was the use of this? The workers who calmed down had to face a more cruel reality. Whether they gritted their teeth and turned around with the Grez forces or turned around and ran, they only welcomed the same final outcome. Tat, 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 tat. The Grez forces sent out by the Aryan Head fleet were in small teams of 3. They kept attacking the broken formation of the workers in order to make it easier for the workers to find a way to escape to Dot 3. If this meant that the Grez pilots had a conscience, then it was a big mistake. They were merely enjoying the performance of a cat catching a mouse. If this battle ended too quickly, then it meant that the so-called suppression by Lars Horn was just a performance. It's about time. It's time to close the net. The Aryan Head fleet commander estimated that a lot of time had passed. He raised his left hand and was about to give the order to attack. However, something unexpected happened. A faint light suddenly appeared in the shadow of Dot 3. Gretz, who was chasing after a crippled Spina-Rodi that had lost the ability to fight again, was cut into 2 at lightning speed. BZZD. Boom. Gretz, who had been severed in an instant, had just been touched by the leaping electric sparks when a tragic explosion followed. In the dazzling light, the workers who luckily escaped from the side of the Grim Reaper looked at the scene in front of them in a daze. It was a pair of beautiful light wings that spread out along with Grez's explosion. That's, as the beautiful radiance of the wings filled the eyes of the labor pilots. The owner of this pair of radiant wings, the Freedom Gundam, had already rushed into the battlefield in front of Da3. A one-sided battle? Just what I wanted. The screen in front of him kept showing the destroyed Spina Rotis logo, as well as the continuous receiving of distress signals. As soon as the uninvited guests appeared on the battlefield, they immediately attracted the attention of one of the nearby Glaze squads. It was a coincidence. The Grez pilot, who was killed by Freedom Gouda, seemed to have a good relationship with the captain of this Grez team. As a result, a scene that could be considered to be exceptionally enraged when enemies met took place. Tat 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 tat. In the blink of an eye, the Grez team that targeted Freedom Gao decisively launched an attack in a formation with one close range and two long-range attacks. Tat 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 tat. The two 120mm short rifles in their hands kept suppressing the Freedom Gundam with medium to long-range firepower. With the Freedom Gundam as the center, the two Glaze Shield-type fighters continued to create opportunities for their captain, the Glaze Shield-type fighter wielding a large halberd, to engage the Freedom Gundam in close combat. As the saying goes, an inch longer is an inch stronger. With a large halberd in his hand that had a longer attacking range than Gao Da's dual swords, and with the tacit protection from his subordinates, the captain of the Grez Shield-type soldier felt that he had the key to victory in his hands. On the surface, the rapid and short bursts of fire from the two Grez pilots who occupied the medium to long range did indeed further reduce the space for Freedom Gouda's movement. He had to face the attacks from a medium to long range, while also being forced to deal with the attacks from the Shield-type soldier. Tat 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 tat. In the barrage of bullets from the 120mm short rifles, the Grez Shield-type soldier saw an opportunity. While Freedom Gouda was pinned down, he swung the large halberd in his hand and went straight to the back of Freedom Gouda, the center of the strange pair of light wings. This attack was bound to end this battle, and it was also bound to destroy this strange airframe that suddenly appeared. However, the final attack that the Grez team imagined didn't happen, because the moment the large halberd in the Grez Shield-type soldier's hand was about to touch Freedom Gouda's back, a sword energy flashed across the Grez Shield-type soldier's chest like lightning. In the next second, when the gorgeous light wings bloomed again, it was the moment when three deadly and beautiful sparks bloomed on the battlefield again. How? How is this possible? How did he get rid of the Grez team in an instant? How is this possible? The CIC exclaimed in disbelief on the bridge of Aryan Head's flagship. At the same time, a signal that forcibly interfered with the news broadcast channel of DOT's Colonial Satellite Group appeared. I'm Gedelia Lana Bernstein. Now, I'm speaking to everyone on Earth. Everyone on Earth, can you hear me? I want to tell everyone the truth that Lars Horn hid. The girl in a red dress with long blonde hair and a serious expression faced the camera fearlessly, and she even revealed her identity to everyone on the other side of the camera. Chapter 708. The girl in red on the live broadcast that occupied the entire channel. In the universe where the Dort Colonial Satellite Cluster was located, the Freedom Gao swept through the entire battlefield. That was what the Aryan Head fleet was facing now. The Aryan Head fleet commander was shocked. His hands were trembling as he ordered loudly, Quickly cut off this live broadcast signal for me. Quick! The bridge crew who acted first gave him an answer that he could not accept. Commander, we've already cut off the signal. It's just that the other party seems to have used some technology beyond our imagination to firmly control the signal transmission channel. Relying on the communication technology of the Aryan Head fleet, it's impossible to cut off the other party's signal. What? How is that possible? How could such a thing happen? If it's just the live broadcast channel of the Dort Colonial Satellite Cluster, the Aryan Head fleet should have completely controlled it. Unless, the moment he thought of a certain possibility, the Aryan Head fleet commander suddenly raised his head and looked at the screen. It was the tactical interface that showed the mission that the Gretz fleet had already sent out. The one-sided slaughter in the beginning had quietly changed. The reason for this situation was the unfamiliar mech that had a pair of beautiful wings. On the other side of the battlefield, in a cruiser belonging to the Baljevan family, Galio and Lucio were also watching the battle. That mech has appeared. Galio seemed to be eager to try. But even if we act now, it's too late. Lucio calmly explained the various interests that they had to take action now. The changes in this battle are too fast. From the beginning of the labor riot to the Aryan head fleet suppressing the labor force to the appearance of that body, it seemed to have happened in the blink of an eye. We've lost the best opportunity to strike. Galio gritted his teeth and finally snorted. Yes, this one-sided massacre changed too quickly. Whether it was the one-sided slaughter of the laborers by the Aryan head fleet, or the appearance of the Freedom Gundam that forced the slaughter into a stalemate, Galio had lost the best opportunity to participate in this battle. Even if Aryan head's fleet backed off from the emblem of the Seven Stars family, they would definitely make things difficult for the Bardoin family in the Command Bureau after this to regain some face. Although it was harmless, it could make the Baljevan family lose face among the Baljevan family. In order to prevent this situation from happening, the old farts of the Baljevan family would not let Galio act recklessly. Lucio glanced at the slightly angry Galio and smiled. Even if we can't attack, we can already see this good show. The girl regarded as the hope of the Martians, is making her voice heard. On the screen in front of them, Gudelia made her first public speech to the Dort Colonial Satellite Group and even all the humans on Earth. In this corner of the universe, there are many people like the Martians suffering from the oppression and domination of Lars Horn. The girl in the red dress on the screen had a firm expression, and the determination in her eyes was shocking. This was the live broadcast signal from the Ironflower Group's fishing fire, and it was also sent to all parts of Earth by White Lion State Zero. In the endless electronic data world, the pure white lion raised its head and looked at the data firmament that flowed with 0 and 1. Every change there was under the control of the pure white lion. As soon as the data firmament appeared in the cacophony used by Aryan Head's fleet, the pure white lion would be able to capture it and erase it from the data world. Humph! What mess! After staring at the data sky that gradually calmed down, the pure white lion's image quietly disappeared from the electronic data world and returned to the real world. State Zero, what's the situation? Lux asked after seeing the pure white lion's golden pupils open again. White Lion State Zero nodded slowly and cast a reassuring look at Lux. Then, it's up to Kai and the others now. Gudelia's global broadcast was still ongoing. With the global broadcast, the pressure on Frigao also increased. The unfamiliar, powerful, and hostile Freedom Gundam had already become a thorn in the side of Gretz's forces under Aryan Head's fleet. Every time they saw their own Gretz being cut like a fragile piece of paper by the two swords in Frigao Da's hands, all the Gretz pilots who witnessed the scene could not help but feel a chill down their spine and break out in cold sweat. The reason why Gretz was able to become Lars Horn's new mech. Not only was it a reflection of firepower and maneuverability, but it was also reflected in the level of its armor, which was enough to face most of the known enemy's weapons. Unfortunately, the high-frequency vibration sword in Frigao Da's hands was a weapon that Gretz's forces had never encountered before. Pull away. Pull away. Don't get close to this beam plane. Engage in close combat. Use your rifles to kill it. After paying the painful price of nearly 10 Gretz pilots dying under the high-frequency vibration sword of Frigao, Gretz's forces finally understood that the close combat performance they were so proud of was not worth mentioning in front of Frigao. Thus, the formation of Gretz's forces surrounding Frigao changed. They all switched to 120mm rifles and short rifles and fired wildly at Frigao. The rhythmic but terrifyingly dense bullet screen instantly enveloped Frigao. From afar, Gretz's forces, who occupied all the advantageous attacking positions and locked down Frigao Da's movement path, almost held the key to victory. Now, all he needed to do was pull the trigger and unleash all the ammunition he had on the Freedom Gundam to end this battle once and for all. Seeing this scene, all the Gretz pilots did not hesitate to believe that they would be able to kill Free Gouda. However, at this moment, the Gretz pilots were destined to be disappointed, because Free Gouda's equipment was not only the two high-frequency vibration swords. In terms of defense, it was also equipped with a piece of equipment that the Gretz pilots, and even Lars Horn, who ended the era of sacrificial wars, had never seen before: the PS armor. As long as there was enough energy, the PS armor could have a near-perfect defense against live ammunition. It was as if it was specially customized for Gouda's Predator world. Whether it was a battleship or an MS, the live ammunition weapons they used against Free Gouda, who came from another time in space and was equipped with the PS armor, there was only one outcome: energy output efficiency reduced by 15%, PS armor operating normally. In Free Gouda's cockpit, Ray Minkai casually pressed a button. After looking at a certain data that popped up on the screen, he immediately showed a smile. The PS armor owned by Free Gouda could achieve a cheat-like effect after coming to this Gouda's Predator world. Maybe this can be called a health lock ? Outside, the attack of Gretz's forces was still ongoing. However, the 120mm rifles and short rifles in the hands of Gretz's forces could only cause a series of sparks on Free Gouda's body and had no other effect. In the beginning, Gretz's pilots simply thought that this was because of the thickness of Free Gouda's armor. However, as time passed, they saw that the Free Gouda was still unscathed despite the crazy sparks on his body. An ominous premonition quietly shrouded the heads of Gretz's pilots. How was this possible? Under the intensive fire, Gretz's forces had already run out of ammunition. Faced with the situation of running out of ammunition and the enemy being unscathed, Gretz's pilots seemed to have begun to doubt life. Faintly, a gap appeared in the attacking formation of Gretz's forces that originally occupied an advantageous position. This fleeting opportunity was seized by Ray Minkai without hesitation. I've been used as a target for so long. It's my turn now. The light wings on Free Gouda's back instantly expanded by 30%, and a series of afterimages appeared, attracting countless bullets to chase after him. Be careful. The beam-wing plane is coming. Gretz, who reacted quickly, immediately warned his teammates, but Gouda was even faster than him. In the blink of an eye, Free Gouda rushed from the center of the rain of bullets to the left wing of Gretz's forces. At the same time, he waved the high-frequency vibration blade in his hand and cut two Gretz's aircraft in half. Shwa! Shwa! The cold steel armor was completely useless under the high-frequency vibration blade, and only the final outcome of being torn apart by the terrifying energy of the explosion was left. Although I can block one with one sword, how long will it take? Looking at the marked Gretz on the screen, Ray Minkai counted and found that there were still nearly 80 aircraft. This was the strength of Aryan Head's fleet, right? One with one sword, one with one. It would probably take Ray Minkai and Free Gouda some time to finish them off, right? Of course, Free Gouda had the means to quickly clear the map. However, the only weapons that Gouda had that could cause effective damage to the Predator's aircraft were the two swordfish railguns on his waist. Unfortunately, in this world, there was a weapon similar to the swordfish railguns, but it was regarded as a taboo by Lars Horn and was also jokingly called the gun nail by the netizens. Now, Ray Minkai didn't want to expose Free Gouda's trump card too early. Is this the justice that Lars Horn insists on? If so, then I will never agree with this kind of justice. In order to claim the righteousness that he holds, to mislead others, to frame others, and to cause a massacre of justice. I will never agree with this. While Ray Minkai was dealing with the Gretz's fleet in Free Gouda, Gedelia's speech also came to an end. Gedelia's reproach pushed the global live broadcast to the end. Gedelia's hands were tightly clasped together, and her eyes were full of fearlessness. If my speech is not correct, then you, Lars Horn, go ahead and sink my ship. This was a provocation. It was also a slap in the face. Free Gouda alone restrained all of the Gretz's forces sent by Aryan Head's fleet, and they couldn't continue to suppress the workers. Gedelia, who was in the middle of the battle, relied on words to publicize what Lars Horn had done on the Dort colonial satellite cluster. With these two factors, the Aryan Head fleet, whose movements were hindered, naturally wouldn't give up. However, just as the Aryan Head fleet commander was about to get angry and fight to the death, the communication from the African Union rang. Cease fire. Stop all fighting in the Dort colonial satellite cluster, and leave the Dort colonial satellite cluster as soon as possible. Such a tough request was completely different from the previous request and cooperation with the Aryan Head fleet. But the Aryan Head fleet commander couldn't do anything. As the wings of light blossomed in front of the fish fire again, Gray's troops, who had sealed off all exits, extinguished the flames of their thrusters and quietly stayed where they were, watching the unfamiliar body that they could not defeat despite using all their strength, and the fish fire that was slowly sailing out of the colonial satellite cluster under their watch. The battle is over? Probably. Galio stared at the assault ships that were slowly passing by Aryan Head's fleet. He didn't say a word, but his eyes were more focused on the unfamiliar body that occupied the leading position and led the fish fire to shuttle through the Aryan Head fleet. Next, the Ironflower Regiment's space rats will probably land on Earth. That might be our chance. Chance? Lou Lucio, who was standing next to him, raised his eyebrows as he thought of someone. Really? If you can meet that person personally, we might be able to stop the Taiwan Regiment before they land on Earth. That person, that woman. Galio suddenly felt a headache, but he still made a decision in the end. You're right. As long as we can get that woman's permission, we won't have to watch from afar like this time. You're right. Lou Lucio nodded slightly, but he didn't say anything else. Calta issue. She's the eldest daughter of a 7-star family, and she's also a fleet commander who carries out traditions. Huh. I wonder what will happen when I'm attacked by the Imperial Knight Commander. I'm looking forward to it. Chapter 709. Clang. The moment the blade was pulled out, a cold light shook the surrounding air. The crisp sound of the sword. The cold light of the sword. It was impossible to tell that the sword Ray Minkai pulled out had a history of at least 300 years. This is the legendary sword worn by the hero Agunika Kairu at the end of the sacrificial war of UR. More than 10 years ago, it was taken into the warehouse of the Mondak Chamber of Commerce by the previous generation. It seems that this sword that has been covered in dust for 300 years has finally welcomed a new owner. The man with long silver hair, golden hair, a fox-like mask, a tall figure, and a calm voice was the current leader of the Mondak Chamber of Commerce, who took the initiative to come to the Mondak Chamber of Commerce and claimed to be able to provide help to the Ironflower Regiment. However, Ray Minkai already knew the identity of the masked man sitting opposite him. I don't think I'm qualified to accept this sword worn by the legendary hero Agunika Ko, who ended the sacrificial war of UR. Ray Minkai glanced at the man who claimed to be the leader of the Mondak Chamber of Commerce, but was actually Lars Horn's special agent, Major McGillis. He casually sheathed the sword and placed it on the table. Huh, you must be joking. With your Excellency's strength, you definitely have the qualifications to accept this sword. Also, other than you, I can't think of anyone else who is worthy of this legendary sword. McGillis didn't seem to realize that Ray Minkai had seen through his identity, and he still spoke at his original pace. Moreover, in order to increase the credibility of his words, McGillis even looked at Nemes and the others sitting on the side. Compared to me, who is just a bystander, everyone who has followed you all the way from Mars to now should understand your strength, right? Does this legendary sword have the qualifications to be your sword? Everyone should have some understanding of this, right? Nemes and Olga looked at each other, and the latter scratched the back of her head under Nemes' encouraging gaze. In fact, I don't know the value of this sword. For me, this sword is just a decoration. Olga's words were within Ray Minkai's expectations. After all, to Olga and the others, these antiques were not as useful as a bullet. What about mine, Ace? After Olga finished speaking, he shrugged his shoulders casually and spread his hands. Olga is right. To us, ordinary people, These things that were left behind hundreds of years ago might only be worth some money. As for whether it was a legend or not, that was another matter altogether. We don't really understand either. The leaders of the Iron Flower Regiment and Tabans expressed that they didn't want to get involved in this matter. McGillis was not surprised. This was the legendary sword worn by the hero Agunica Kuru. It was only McGillis' whim that he took it out. After watching the battle on the Dort Colonial Satellite Cluster from afar, watching the free Gauda, who was holding two swords and spreading its wings of light, McGillis suddenly had the illusion that he was looking at the legendary machine, Gauda Bayeri, who was at the top of the 72 demons. God? Demon? Watching the free Gauda, who easily destroyed the Gret squad, McGillis couldn't find the words to describe that moment. Only when he was young and in the middle of the night, when he dragged his body that was dominated by pain and scars, he flipped through the bookcase. The moment he flipped open the book that recorded the legend, a tremor surged from the depths of his heart. McGillis slowly took a deep breath and calmed down his slightly fluctuating thoughts. If you don't think you're qualified to wear this sword, you can keep it as a collection. After all, the Mundak Chamber of Commerce has no intention of taking back the things that were given out. Of course, as the current leader of the Mundak Chamber of Commerce, I don't want to set a precedent. McGillis' firm attitude surprised Ray Minkai. But since he said so, Ray Minkai couldn't refuse. Ray Minkai wasn't unfamiliar with the sword. When he attended the various official activities of the Britalia Empire, and even when he attended the court as the Empire's knight captain, he naturally had to wear a sword. However, Ray Minkai didn't think that he would have such fate with the sword even when he was so far away from the Britalia Empire. No, Leader Mundak doesn't need to be like this. I'll just accept it. Ray Minkai picked up the sword on the table again. His right hand gripped the hilt and exerted a little force. Clang! The sound of the sword. It was also a dragon's roar. The blade that had been sleeping for 300 years seemed to awaken once again when Ray Minkai pulled it out. The sword light that bloomed made Olga, Eugene, and the others who were standing behind the sofa take a step back subconsciously. Only the three suns and moons who didn't know the situation were still standing behind Ray Minkai. So dangerous. In that instant, I felt like I was going to be cut. Eugene patted his chest and looked at the sword that Ray Minkai had pulled out with lingering fear in his heart. And yes, is this really a sword from 300 years ago? Olga nodded and asked after seeing Ray Minkai sheath the sword again. It is indeed a sword from 300 years ago. I can use the reputation of the Mundak Chamber of Commerce as a guarantee. After all, the previous leader of the Mundak Chamber of Commerce spent a third of the Chamber of Commerce's wealth to get this sword. McGillis looked at Ray Minkai's smooth movements and nodded with satisfaction. It seems that this sword is indeed very suitable for you. Thank you. I'll remember this great gift. The treasured sword looked completely different when it was sheathed. Ray Minkai knew what McGillis was thinking, but now wasn't the time to say it out loud. Then, the purpose of the Mundak Chamber of Commerce is purely to support the landing of the Iron Flower Regiment. When Ray Minkai spoke again, he didn't mention the sword anymore. McGillis naturally knew this, but he was willing to accept it. Yes, it's just that this help isn't just a friendly one. It's to participate in the ideals advocated by Gedelia Lana Bernstein. Ideals? Gedelia, who had been sitting silently on the side, finally welcomed her turn. But this girl, who had a pure ideology not long ago and only knew the cruelty of the world on Mars, immediately saw through McGillis' words. The Mundak Chamber of Commerce wants to participate in the half-metal mining project on Mars. McGillis' eyes revealed a hint of surprise. He didn't expect Gedelia to see through his intentions, even though it was only on the surface. Yes, if we can participate in the half-metal mining project of Daiwas and Nalabus, I believe the Mundak Chamber of Commerce will also gain a lot of benefits. For this, helping the Iron Flower Regiment land on Earth is only a small matter. Such a simple and straightforward exchange made Gedelia sigh in relief. Okay, I promise you, as long as we successfully land on Earth and reach an agreement with Abro, then the Mundak Chamber of Commerce will benefit from the half-metal mining project. Hee hee. Great. As expected of the revolutionary girl seen as the hope of the Martians. Then the deal is done. Now, the Mundak Chamber of Commerce's transport ship has the materials needed by the Ironflower Regiment. Please send someone to receive it. This is also a gift for our first meeting. The simple and short meeting ended. Because the plan to land on Earth was next, everyone went into a busy state after disbanding. Lei Mingkai, on the other hand, came to the observation deck and held the sword silently. Why? Kai, I heard from Gedelia and the others. Did the Mundak Chamber of Commerce give you a sword? Lux, who did not want to participate in the meeting with the Mundak Chamber of Commerce, also came to Rei Mingkai's side and looked at the sword in Rei Mingkai's hand with interest. Yes. This is not as simple as a gift. Lux, this is probably a legend that someone looked forward to. Legend? Lux blinked her eyes in surprise, as if she was surprised. Yes. According to legend, this sword was once worn by the hero Agunika Kuru, who ended the tragic war 300 years ago. A hero's sword? But I don't think it's inappropriate for you to wear it. Sir Knight. After hearing the introduction of the sword, Lux suddenly smiled mischievously. A knight's sword? Rei Mingkai's gaze moved away from the sword and looked at the blue planet in the distance. Soon, the Ironflower Regiment would meet the biggest obstacle to landing on Earth. Kalte Yethu. As the successor of the Yethu family, one of the 7-star families, she was also the commander of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet. Now, she was looking at the report from the Aryan Head Fleet. Ironflower Regiment, a third-rate civilian security company from Mars, to be able to humiliate Aryan Head's fleet? Kalta's eyebrows furrowed deeply. No matter how she thought about it, she could not imagine that the Aryan Head Fleet, one of Lars Horn's trump cards, would be defeated by an unknown civilian security company. They even lost face and were forced to admit defeat under the words of Gedelia Lana Bernstein. Kalta did not expect such a change in the Dort Colonial Satellite Group incident. In her mind, Lars Horn was undoubtedly a righteous existence. As long as it was a place where Gallahorn's fleet and MS's troops could reach, any rebel would be crushed like rotten wood. Commander, there's a communication request. Kalta, who was looking at the information, raised her head and looked at her subordinate with displeasure. It's an encrypted communication from the Bardouin family. Bardouin family? Kalta took a moment to process. Is it the kid from the Bardouin family who is dragging us down? Humph, connected. They had been friends since they were young. So Carta looked down on Gario Bardouin, the eldest son of one of the 7 Stars families. No matter how hard Galio worked and performed, in Carta's mind, the kid was always worried about personal gains and losses, and he was always a burden. Kalta, long time no see. As soon as she opened the communication, it was indeed Gario's face. Kalta slightly adjusted his sitting posture and responded faintly. It's Commander Kalta. Gario, don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you completed a border patrol with a man. Gario took a moment to process the information, and he felt a headache. Gario, I know what you're thinking. You want to participate in the battle to stop the rebels from landing on Earth, right? No problem. I can approve your participation in the name of the commander of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet. But please do your best. Don't drag us down. Kalta's barrage left Gario speechless. Even if he had thousands of words in his mind, he could not utter a single word in front of Kalta's domineering knight. Leluxiu, who was standing not far away and watching Gario contact Carta, could not help but sigh when he saw Gario's reaction. It seemed that he finally understood why Gario was in such a difficult position. Finally, after putting in a lot of effort and enduring Kalta's poisonous tongue, Galio ended the call. Thank you for your hard work. Mr. Gario. Gario sighed and looked back at Lucio. Mr. K, did you see that? Hey, what an embarrassing scene. But this is how the heirs of the 7-star families get along. Oh, it seems that Mr. Gario is having fun. I'm sorry. That guy, Kalta, had admired McGillis since he was a kid. Just now, you also saw that as the commander of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet, Calta was very dissatisfied with McGillis and my sister's engagement. Fortunately, she didn't give us a hard time. Really? That's a bad relationship. Lou Lucio did not intend to continue the topic of the friendship between the heirs of the seven-star families. But I'm afraid we have to be more careful. In the conversation just now, I noticed something. I'm afraid that Calta Yethu will fall into the mysterious pilot's trap. What? Trap? That airframe? Gario paused for a moment and did not seem to understand. Lou Lucio smiled faintly and continued. The seven-star families were recorded in history from a moment the disaster, sacrificial war ended. Every generation of the heirs of the seven-star families will appear in various public occasions. Therefore, as long as someone has the intention and the ability to obtain some information about the heirs of the seven-star families, it is not difficult. Lou Lucio's words were undoubtedly a reminder. Gario suddenly understood. You're saying that the pilot will act according to Calta's personality? It's possible. Chapter 710. Alien. This device, which was spread all over Earth's important waterways, was not only a communication and navigation device, but also an eye used by Lars Horn to monitor all the ships that entered Alien's control range. No matter where the ships that entered Alien's communication range came from, as soon as they appeared, Alien would immediately capture the reaction of the Ahab furnace that entered the network woven by Alien and lock onto it. Therefore, the strategy of the Earth's Outer Orbit Unified Fleet was very simple. It was to monitor all the monitoring data on all the Alien ships that entered Earth's landing orbit. The frequency of the Ahab furnace that had already been locked on would be filtered out, and then it would be decided with the firepower of a fleet. This strategy was very simple, but it was also very effective. At the same time, it was also a very open and above-board scheme. Let's see what the Iron Flower Regiment, which is being chased by that brat, is capable of. After setting everything up, Calta Issue revealed a relaxed and confident smile. The decision to set up a fleet-level interception net in order to intercept the Iron Flower Regiment's armored ship was already made by Calta based on the information provided by Galileo. She did not believe that a mere armored ship would have a chance to escape in the face of Lars Horn's Outer Orbit Unified Fleet. It's here, outside the network woven by Alien. The Iron Flower Regiment's Yuhua was slowly advancing along the network. And at the top of the Yuhua's bow, a blue-black steel giant with steel wings on its back stood there, looking at the gradually growing blue planet in the distance. That, sir, do you really intend to charge into Earth's whatever fleet's encirclement net alone? The screen in front of Ray Minkai flashed, and Eugene's hesitant face appeared. The landing plan this time was very simple. With the Free Gauda piloted by Ray Minkai as a target to attract the enemy's attention, and Yu Hua as a distraction from the back, and under the cover of the two, the Iron Flower Regiment carrying Lux, Gedelia, Olga, and the others would stealthily drive the shuttle from the edge of the battlefield into Earth's landing orbit. The moment the shuttle reached the landing orbit, the Free Gauda and Yu Hua would accelerate into the atmosphere and return to deep space, escaping from this battle. Of course, this plan itself was an extremely risky one. In particular, as the Freedom Gundam that attracted all the attention of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet, the pressure it faced was unprecedented. Facing Lakis's worries and State Zero's volunteer, Lei Minkai only smiled faintly. In this world, as long as the Free Gauda wants to run, no one, no airframe, or even any fleet can catch up to it. Don't forget that the Freedom Gundam still has the Radiance Bearer as its trump card. That's right. For Lei Minkai to have the confidence to challenge the trump card of the Earth's unified fleet, the Radiance Bearer played a part in it. Looking at Ray Minkai's calm expression, Eugene's originally nervous and excited heart miraculously calmed down. Beep beep. At this time, Chad, who stayed in the bridge, suddenly issued a warning. Your Excellency, Eugene, we have been caught by Lars Horn's alien. Oh, just in time. Let's go all out. Eugene's mood, which had just calmed down, became turbulent again because of this news. Calm down, Eugene. Yuhua only needs to support the free Gauda from the periphery. Yuhua was not as agile as the free Gauda, who could freely shuttle in the dense artillery fire. Therefore, Rei Minkai's initial task for Yuhua was to restrain the enemy from the periphery and attract the attention of the outer orbit unified fleet as much as possible, thus allowing the shuttle to move more smoothly. Understood, Your Excellency, Eugene chuckled. But looking at him, it was obvious that he did not listen to much. In this regard, Rei Minkai did not care about him anymore. When the battle began, the free Gauda would attract the most attention. At this moment, the guerrilla fleet from the Earth Unified Fleet had blocked all the key nodes leading to the Earth's landing orbit. Kalta's strategy had begun to take effect. At this moment, as long as one saw the battle formation of the Earth Unified Fleet, one would know that the Ironflower Regiment might not be able to escape even if they had wings. On the other side of this universe that was about to ignite the flames of war, the Mundak Chamber of Commerce's transport ship was slowly pacing back and forth, watching the battle that was about to begin. Free Gauda, through his contact with the Ironflower Regiment as the leader of the Mundak Chamber of Commerce, McGillis finally learned the name of the mysterious Mecha with light wings. The moment he learned the name, McGillis felt that it was worthy of its name. That unparalleled speed, that amazing power, it was as if an invincible divine soldier had descended from the sky. Free Gauda, let me look forward to your performance. On the eve of the Earth Unified Fleet's battle against the Ironflower Regiment, McGillis's expectations of Free Gauda grew higher and higher. Close. Along with the results shown by the feedback from Alien, the fish fire that had been locked on was gradually accelerating and overtaking Alien, who was the closest to the Earth Unified Fleet. In less than half an hour, the fish fire would enter the maximum range of the Earth Unified Fleet's Primus-class warship. 1 Jutland, blockade complete. 2 Jutland, alert complete. Listening to the feedback from her subordinates, Kalta Aizu thought that victory was already in her hands. She shook her legs slightly and snorted coldly. Such a battle formation might be too exaggerated for a mere armored ship. Immediately after, a warning suddenly sounded. It was the fish fire. It was the fish fire that had entered the maximum range of the Earth Unified Fleet. The well-trained subordinates did not need Kalta's instructions and began to carry out all the warning measures for the fish fire according to the procedure. There was no need to ask about the result. No matter how many times the Earth's Unified Fleet sent out warning signals, the Yuhua, which had charged into the Earth's Unified Fleet's maximum firing range, did not stop the ship. Instead, it moved faster and faster, as if it was going to crash into the Earth's Unified Fleet's formation. Seeing this, Kalta revealed a carefree smile. If they don't stop the ship, then punish them severely. At Kalta's order, the Primordius-class warships of the Earth's outer orbit fleet that had already locked onto the fish fire through Alien immediately raised their main cannons and fired wildly in the direction where the fish fire came from. Amidst the roaring gunfire, countless flames exploded in the targeted universe on the spot. Waves of thick smoke spread under the flames and quickly drowned the direction of the fish fire. The dazzling brilliance made Kalta narrow her eyes slightly, but at the same time, she also felt unusually proud. In any case, no matter how the Ironflower Regiment's fish fire was strengthened and modified, it was impossible for it to survive the powerful firepower of the Earth Unified Fleet. However, reality was a slap in the face. Before Kalta could announce his victory, an ear-piercing warning sounded again. It was the fish fire. It was the fish fire again. Report. The target has not been destroyed. The reaction of the Ahab furnace has increased. The target is shortening the distance between us. No. CIC's scream followed closely. There is another unknown reaction. It's not the Ahab furnace. How is that possible? What? Kalta's expression changed several times. Her mood was like a roller coaster that constantly rose and fell. In the end, she was ruthlessly trampled to the ground by Yuhua, who rushed into the barrage against the Earth's unified fleet and the mysterious airframe that rushed ahead of Yuhua. That's the optical wing aircraft mentioned in the report. Commander, the moment the mysterious airframe raised the shield on its left arm and rushed up against the artillery fire from the Earth Unified Fleet, CIC finally found the information about it. It was from the information provided by Galio. It had a terrifying speed that surpassed all of Lars Horn's airframes. It had a terrifying armor that even Lars Horn's active airframe could not penetrate. There was also a pair of terrifying blades that had never been seen before and never imagined by Lars Horn's most cutting-edge laboratory. The mysterious airframe that was constructed finally appeared in front of the Earth Unified Fleet at this moment, and it appeared in front of Kalta Yethu. It actually rushed up like this. How barbaric! Quick! Inform the fleets on both sides to come forward, concentrate their firepower, and shoot down this optical wing aircraft for me. As for that ridiculous armored ship, send a squadron to drive it away. As long as the optical wing aircraft is taken care of, this battle is just a dessert for our Earth Unified Fleet. Thinking of Galio's description of the free Gauda, Kalta, who had always looked down on Galio, suddenly felt unconvinced. In her view, Galio, the kid who was dragging them down, was just looking for an excuse for his failure. As long as the reckless optical wing aircraft that dared to attack the Earth Unified Fleet head-on was taken care of, then Galio, and even the guy who laughed at her and the Earth Unified Fleet behind her back, would definitely shut their mouths. Boom, 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 under Kalta's order, except for the 3 heralds that were sent to meet the enemy fire. The main cannons and anti-aircraft cannons of the other heralds launched their most powerful attacks one after another. Together with the missiles that rushed out of the launchers, they poured down on the Free Gauda. At this moment, what the Freedom Gundam faced was undoubtedly the most powerful firepower of the unified fleet outside Earth's orbit. Now that's more like it. But in the face of the near-fatal barrage, Rei Minkai just smiled faintly, not paying any attention to the barrage that was enough to drown the Free Gauda. In the blink of an eye, the light wings behind the Free Gauda flashed. The moment the dense barrage arrived, the Free Gauda rushed into the barrage instead of retreating, leaving behind afterimages. He shuttled through the barrage in a dangerous manner. The appearance of each afterimage of the Free Gauda was the moment when the Free Gauda successfully shuttled through the barrage. Suddenly, in the barrage created by the combined efforts of the Innerfish-class warships of the Earth's unified fleet, a scene that was both exceptionally beautiful and extremely shocking appeared. Steel figures with unfolded light wings constantly appeared in the barrage, sometimes on the left, sometimes on the right, sometimes on the top, sometimes on the bottom. It was as if the steel giant with wings of light had taken the barrage of the Earth's outer orbit command fleet as a stage, dancing gracefully on that dazzling and deadly stage. How is this possible? Kalta looked at the scene on the main screen in disbelief. She couldn't believe that the report submitted by Galio was true. In fact, Galio might even have held back. Thinking of this, Kalta gritted her teeth. There was a trace of indignation in her eyes. Attack! 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 No matter what method you use, even if you use up all the ammunition of our Earth Unified Fleet, you must shoot down this photon plane. Kalta's natural paranoia completely broke out at this moment. Although the subordinates were a little surprised, they still did as they were told. In an instant, the heralds of the Earth Unified Fleet burst out with an attack that was 3 times more powerful than before. Is this the end of the line? Facing the increasingly fast and intensive attacks, the Free Gauda could no longer rely solely on speed to break through the barrage. Therefore, the sword was unsheathed. Buzz! A cold light flashed. At the moment when several afterimages dragged past, Zhang Xian was stunned. An oncoming missile had just rushed to the side of the Free Gauda when it was split open by the high-frequency vibration sword in the hands of the Free Gauda. Boom! In the flames of the destroyed missile, the afterimages of the Free Gauda filled the space filled with barrage. At the same time, more missiles blocking the way of the Free Gauda were destroyed one by one. Boom! Boom! The bright fireballs were extremely eye-catching in the dense barrage of bullets. Moreover, the dazzling fireballs continued to extend toward the flagship where the free Gauda was as time went by. Quick, quick, take down that mech for me. Looking at the fireballs getting closer and closer, Kalta screamed again and again as if she had lost the calmness of a fleet commander. However, no matter how hard her subordinates tried, they still could not stop the unstoppable advance of the free Gauda. Especially when the free Gauda broke through the barrage and rushed to the vicinity of the flagship, the surrounding heralds of the heralds suddenly stopped firing. They did not dare to fire even a single cannon at the free Gauda. He was afraid that before hitting the Freedom Gundam, these cannons would hit the flagship that Kalta was on. Quick, quick! Kalta's screams were suddenly cut off, because a bone-chilling cold light had been pointed at the bridge. Chapter 711. From the moment Yu Hua rushed into the range of the Earth's outer orbit unified fleet, to the moment when Freedom Gauda fearlessly shuttled through the fleet's air defense barrage, 2 airframes also flew out from the Bardovan family's cruiser located behind the left wing of the Earth's outer orbit unified fleet. They were Gauda, Samanli, and Schwebelgrace. So, they're here? Mr. K, it seems that your speculation is correct. Galio looked at the Freedom Gundam's astonishing performance and seemed to sigh. No, it's just a simple speculation based on the performance of the airframe. Lu Lucio didn't take credit for it. In fact, the actions taken by Freedom Gauda were almost all based on his speculation. With the speed advantage, that was enough to beat all of Lars Horn's airframes. No matter who it was, they would take the same action. At this time, the blade in Freedom Gauda's hand was already pointed at the flagship of the Earth's outer orbit unified fleet. Not good. Mr. K, don't let that airframe sink Kalta's ship. As soon as Galio's voice rang out from the communication channel, the Samanli had already charged quite a distance away. Furthermore, the instant the Samanli Gundam unleashed its maximum speed, the Samanli Gundam, under Galio's control, suddenly raised its right hand and threw the lance in its hand at the Freedom Gundam. In the blink of an eye, the spear actually managed to block the Freedom Gundam's blade. Although Ray Minkai immediately sensed that something was wrong and retracted Freedom Gauda's blade, it could no longer threaten the flagship of the Earth's outer orbit unified fleet. The lance that pierced through the air and landed heavily in front of the flagship bridge also awakened all of the bridge personnel, including Kalta. Quick, attack with all the anti-air cannons. Don't worry if you will accidentally hurt your allies. Also, all his team attack. After a moment of hysteria, Kalta, who felt that he had just escaped from the brink of death, finally regained his composure and rationality. He quickly and accurately issued the correct orders. The active signals of the Ahab continued to appear at this moment, and in the increasingly dazzling light of the thrusters, they flew out from all parts of the fleet and surrounded Freedom Gauda. And before the Glaze Squadron, they had spared no expense, even disregarding the possibility of accidentally harming their allies, just to completely expel Gauda from the airspace around the flagship. Are you going all out? Ray Minkai, whose attack was interrupted, glanced at the lance that was inserted in front of the flagship's bridge. He raised his head slightly and looked at the sky above the battlefield. As expected, Gauda Samanli was there. The flames from the powerful propulsion engine that was specially installed at Gauda's feet were extremely eye-catching. Even the ferocious anti-aircraft fire and the rapidly approaching Glaze's troops could not conceal the existence of Gauda Samanli. Clang! In the void filled with gunfire, Gauda Samanli swung his sword straight at Freedom Gauda's chest, where Galio thought the cockpit was. This was a fatal blow. Galio knew very well that the Freedom Gauda in front of him was not the kind of person who could fight back and forth with him. If he was slightly careless, he would definitely be cut down by Galio's sword in an instant. Therefore, there was only one chance, and it was in an instant. Galio's idea was correct, but he forgot how terrifying the high-frequency vibration blade in Gauda's hand was. Just as the fatal blow was about to pierce Gauda's chest, Gao de Samanli's sword suddenly stopped, and a broken sword flew out from the screen in front of Galio's eyes. Not good. Galio's reaction was not slow. The moment the broken sword was captured by Galio's electronic eyes, the propulsion engine between Gao de Samanli's feet suddenly roared. With the help of many auxiliary engines, Gao de Samanli forcibly escaped from Gao Da's sword. At that moment, Galio's scalp was numb. Because of his actions and the feedback of Gao de Samanli were even a moment slower, Gao de Samanli would inevitably leave something behind by Gao de scars on the armor, or a broken hand or foot, or was it his own life? Fortunately, the moment Gao de Samanli escaped from Gao Da's sword, the Gretz troops sent by the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet also arrived. They immediately raised their guns and fired, providing the necessary cover for Gao de Samanli. Moreover, what surprised Galio was that a very familiar Gretz, the Gretz Knight commander type, was among the Gretz troops, surrounded by many Gretz Knights. That body, Kalta. That's right. The familiarity of growing up together made Galio instantly recognize the owner of the body. That's it. Galio, you've done well. Now, leave it to our Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet to deal with. Sure enough, it was just as Galio thought. The Gretz Knight commander type that was surrounded by many knights was piloted by Kalta Yetu. Kalta! Galio was suddenly speechless. He couldn't help but think, doesn't this guy know how terrifying that body is? How dare he appear here so openly? Galio, what are you still doing here? This is a diversion. That body appeared here so openly. I'm afraid it's covering most of the Ironflower Regiment's members to sneak into Earth. The sudden appearance of Kalta made Galio feel a sense of unfamiliarity. The current Kalta's expression was serious and rational. It was completely different from the hysterical look just now. Galio was in a dilemma, but in the end, he nodded and agreed to Kalta's request. Good. I'll leave it to you guys. Kalta, be careful of that body sword. I'm afraid that Gretz's armor won't be able to withstand the slash of that sword. In the blink of an eye, under the cover of the Gretz troops, Gao de Samanli flew to the flagship of the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet at full speed. After pulling out the lance that was thrown out previously, it directly flew down to Earth. Galio knew that Kalta's conjecture was correct. Now, he could only believe that the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet led by Kalta would be able to stop Gao de Samanli, so that he could seize the key to the victory of this battle. Humph! Did Galio really leave? Looking at Gao de Samanli's back that was rapidly disappearing, Kalta let out a slight sigh and immediately issued an order. At this moment, the sky full of artillery fire stopped. Gao de Samanli, who was galloping back and forth among the anti-air artillery fire of the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet, also stopped moving and looked at this sudden scene from afar. Gretz Knight? At the front, Gray's team, who had stopped the dense anti-aircraft fire the moment they appeared, were extremely eye-catching, and Lei Minkai recognized them at a glance. The scene that followed was even more so. With the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet and the Blue Planet as the background, the team of Gretz Knight that appeared on the battlefield actually lined up in an arrow-shaped formation and raised the blades in their hands at Gao de Samanli in unison. Moreover, the Gretz Knight commander with eye-catching red paint on the shoulder armor and antenna even issued a proud declaration on the public channel without any scruples. We are the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet. 9 years of isolation, strong and solid. This scene made Lei Minkai speechless for a while. He remembered how he had complained about this line of dialogue when he watched Iron Blubbabatos back then. But he didn't expect that he would have the opportunity to personally face this declaration today. What should I do? Just like the plot I saw back then, with 3 days and 3 months, Zhao Hong and Sino will attack without any scruples? Or is it that, after thinking for a while, Lei Minkai shook his head slightly. In the next second, Gao de Samanli's left hand turned over, and the blade had already returned to the sheath, leaving only the high-frequency vibration blade in his right hand. Then, he responded to the Gretz Knight with a salute. Unexpectedly, Kalta was stunned by his actions. Originally, the so-called 9 years of isolation was just a drastic method she adopted because she was unwilling to accept that she, and even the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet, was looked down upon by the Command Bureau. She didn't expect that someone would respond to this at all. After being stunned for a moment, Kalta's eyebrows trembled a few times, but she still said what she thought. It was just that her voice was not as arrogant as before. Barbarians from the outer circle, Earth is not a place where you can do whatever you want. In order to protect our home, and in order to eliminate the factors that disturb the peace of Earth, I, as the commander of the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet, announce that you will be punished with iron. When Kalta made the declaration, the Gretz Knight commander she was piloting pointed its blade at Gao de Samonli. In the end, there was no response on the communication channel. Only flashes of light kept flashing on the screen. That's an optical signal. Kalta frowned, but she still activated the analysis program, but she didn't expect the analysis result to make her furious. What? How dare? You want us to attack together, and you say you're in a hurry? Outrageous. The message transmitted by the optical signal was even more arrogant than Kalta's declaration just now. There was no doubt. Now Kalta's mind was almost filled with anger. Eugene, get ready to retreat. Leave this to me. Understood. Then we'll go first. Eugene, who was still troubled by Gretz's team, heard Lei Minkai take the initiative to ask them to evacuate first. Then, as if he had thought of something, he hurriedly shouted, "Let's go. Your Excellency, you really don't need us to stay and support you? No. Fish fire will only be a hindrance if we stay here." Rei Minkai's answer was incomparably realistic, leaving Eugene and the others speechless. Fish fire had just turned around and accelerated its retreat. Once more the furious Kalta chanted the slogan she had invented. Face the wall for 9 years. Firm and solid. Arrow formation, assault. In an instant, the arrow formation formed by the Gretz Knight rushed towards Gao de Samonli with unparalleled momentum. That imposing appearance made people exclaim in admiration, but also made people feel pity. Clinging to tradition is not bad, but clinging to tradition will only cause people to drown. Facing the arrow formation formed by the Gretz Knight, Gao de Samonli only raised his sword diagonally and assumed a fighting stance. As for the other high-frequency vibration sword that he had previously sheathed, Rei Minkai felt that he didn't need to use it for the time being. It was just a formation that was clinging to tradition and copying Xianku. There was no need for him and Gao de Samonli to use all their strength. Iron Fist Judgment. While Kalta and his men were shouting, the arrow assault formation formed by the Knight of Grez had already arrived in front of Gauda. From Rei Minkai's point of view, there was nothing to nitpick about this steel torrent charge. To ordinary people, but to Rei Minkai, this so-called arrow formation was full of flaws. Other things aside, the Grez Knight commander that Kalta was piloting was the biggest flaw. As expected, he delivered himself to my doorstep. Kalta issue. When Gauda advanced instead of retreating, the slanted blade in his hand instantly launched, drawing a sword light in the air, directly slashing down on the Gretz Knight commander driven by Kalta. At first glance, this strike seemed ordinary, but it was already extremely dangerous. Galio's warning was perfectly executed at this moment. As the core of the arrow assault formation, it was also the core of the Earth's Outer Orbit Unified Fleet. The Grez Knight commander piloted by Kalta Issue had been specially modified. Whether it was armor or weapons, it was far beyond the level of the Grez Knight. But even such a body couldn't last around under Gao Da's sword. Bang! Sound couldn't be transmitted in the air, but the sound of the blade being cut sounded in the hearts of Kalta's men. Looking at the blade that was cut off and thrown away, looking at the sword mark on the chest of the Grez Knight commander, all of a sudden, everyone began to panic. Quickly cover the commander's retreat. Change formation. Whirlwind formation. As soon as Kalta's adjutant saw the sword mark that broke the Grez Knight commander's chest armor, he immediately issued an emergency order. At this moment, it was the most anxious moment for the Earth's outer orbit unified fleet. However, it was also the moment that Ray Minkai had been waiting for a long time. Since you've taken the bait, then stay here obediently. The so-called whirlwind formation was just to use the high mobility of the Greznite to disrupt the target's line of sight, thereby providing cover for the other Greznite's actions and obtaining the opportunity to launch a fatal blow. However, this was for Gouda. It had no effect on Ray Minkai. The blade of the Greznite, who occupied the attacking position on the left flank, was blocked by Gouda's PS armor with just a raise of his left hand. And this was not the end. Taking advantage of the moment when the slash was blocked, Gouda opened his left hand and caught the blade of the Greznite in his hand. With a burst of tremendous force, he forcefully pulled it from the left to the right, blocking in front of another Greznite that was trying to cooperate with the attack. Boom! At this moment, it was almost too late to react. The two Greznite collided with a loud bang. Then, Gouda raised his right leg and kicked hard at the two Greznite that were mounted together, avoiding the attack from behind. As his gaze moved, Ray Minkai discovered that while Gouda was entangled by the other Greznites, the Greznite, one on the left and one on the right, was quickly retreating with the Greznite. Want to escape? Don't even think about it. The light wings suddenly bloomed. When Gouda's afterimage appeared, he had already blocked in front of the Greznite, who was trying to retreat with the Greznite. In the blink of an eye, when the pair of high-frequency vibration blades were once again held in Gouda's hands, they had already set off several sword lights that enveloped the two Grez. Between the fragments, when the armor was broken, in the desperate eyes of Kalta's subordinates, the Knight Commander Gretz, who should have been the one to disregard their lives and protect even at the cost of their own lives, was now in front of their eyes. After the Freedom Gundam reduced the Knight Commander Gretz into a stick form, the Gundam carried the broken body and fearlessly flew past the formation of the Earth's outer orbit command fleet and flew towards the blue planet. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.